Primary election day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
G'day world, this is the Sniper of the Skies, Robbie Eagles, and you are listening to Keeping It Strong Style.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keeping It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out in Barrio the Frogs. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, we'll review nights 7 through 10 of Best of the Super Junior 31 and cover all latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Please support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get all the network's podcasts over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/social suplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. We are streaming live right now on patreon.com/KI Strong Style. For IWGP subscribers, you can access the live stream, ad-free audio, and bonus content by subscribing at patreon.com/KI Strong Style. And it's a great week to subscribe. The first episode of my Dominion Deep Dive series will be dropping later this week. So you get that. You sign up on the $5 tier. It's going to get you all the bonus audio, but if you want, be here on the live stream where we're at right now, see the video, you can also get on the $10 IWGP tier, and you'll also get the bonus audio too.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, so explain to me again the concept of what you're doing with the Dominion Deep Dive, because you're kind of rogue on this one. It's
yeah, I've been going rogue with the Patreon. I just had the idea and I was like, let me try it. And so Dominion Deep Dive, I'm going to be reviewing every Dominion main event. Well, actually, I might stop towards more of the recent ones that we've reviewed already on the show. I might go up to maybe 2019, maybe 2020. But essentially, I'm going to try, it's Dominion season, and I'm going to try and review a bunch of these Dominion main events throughout the summer on the Patreon. So I got episode 1 is in the can. Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Minobu Nakanishi, June 20th, 2009. And it's not just a match review. I do a lot of research. I go into the whole background on what's happening in 2009, where the company's at, who the champion's at, what's going on with Tanahashi in 09, what's going on with Nakanishi in 09, how we got to that matchup. So there'll be a preview out that'll drop on the free Keeping a Strong Style feed to give y'all a little taste. And then if you want to subscribe, get the full, it's 50 minutes. This is the first episode. So you're definitely going to want to check that out.
How does the, when it comes to the equity and payout of the channel, with you putting this stuff out, How are we divvying this up? Am I getting a lesser stake because you're creating more content? Am I keeping my original 50%? Like we never discussed this or negotiate. I need to know what my slice of the pie actually is here.
It's just gonna, go all into the show, and hopefully you'll get some time. I know you got your new job and stuff, but hopefully you'll get some time to get on there and create some content. And also, I do want us to do stuff together too, but I know we're both busy, and I've been doing these audios like at random times in the day. It's a lot easier just to quickly, pop up the Roadcaster and do stuff after work real quick, lunch break real quick. But definitely, I do want us to do some stuff together, and also bringing some guests in here. And so, it's just a start.
Jeremy's going to wake up one day and I'm going to have an episode recorded discussing Pioneer era wrestling. Talking about the 1800s dream match between John McMahon and, like that. Yeah, no, that's funny. So with us going live, right? And obviously the majority of the people who are listeners, they're cheapskates. They're out there. They're listening to free on the next day on delay. Do we have a special name that we should call the live edition for those that are in the comment section, those that are paying to view this? Is this Keeping It Strong Style Live? Like, what the fuck is it?
Yeah, I've been calling it Keeping It Strong Style Live on the Patreon. So yeah, that's what it's at.
Nice, man. Well, as you guys probably have learned, if you didn't already know, we are recording one day late due to the holiday. Jeremy, did you do anything for the holiday? And if you did, why was I not invited to it?
Well, one of the main things I did was go over to friend of the show, Jamie Spector's house for AEW Double or Nothing, which I believe you were invited to that. So don't know where you're at.
Yeah, I didn't watch the AEW pay-per-view, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I just it looked good on paper. I'm not trying to dog the show. I just don't have much skin in the game when it comes to that product right now. Like, I don't know. I looked at it and I was like, I could tell you what 4 or 5 matches are going to be great. And you know what? Those are probably the 4 or 5 that did end up being great. But I also knew what the booking was going to be. It just didn't, I don't know, man. It just didn't look like a pay-per-view worth my time to back all the way up to St. Pete, hang out with you guys. Like, maybe I'm fed pilled. I don't know. I watched King of the Ring.
This man,
Saudi Arabia.
This man be like, oh, I don't watch WWE. WWE is trash. Every PLE, this man is watching.
Oh no, I've never lied about that. I watch every PLE. Just like I don't watch every week of. I mean, if I'm going to watch the TV between the two, it's going to be AEW most likely. But, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a good show or anything. It just was. It was on. It's on Peacock. I have Peacock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's middle afternoon. You throw it on, whatever. But I fell asleep during that show. So.
Oh man.
I woke up and Cody Rhodes beat Logan Paul, and I was like, all right, cool. I guess whatever.
Dude,
I don't know how good that was.
Logan Paul looks so much like ELP. Anytime like I'm scrolling Twitter and like I see like it's a quick like picture of him and like gear, I'm like, they got Phantasmo. No. Oh, wait a minute. It's just Logan Paul.
Bro, he was wearing green. So I saw him on Twitter and I thought he was Osprey for a second. I was like, what the fuck is Osprey doing? I didn't get a good look. And then I was like, oh, it's just Logan Paul dressed up in his Mizawa, tribute gear.
Yeah, paying tribute.
Yeah, this man was wearing Kawada colors. Now he's wearing Mizawa colors. Get ready. The orange and the red, they're coming. Four pillars of heaven. But no, I like one last thing before we move on. I like how you said that you're going to stop your project around 2019, 2020. It's very slick. Like you're going to skip out on the Jay White years. You're going to skip out on the Chris Jericho years. You're going to basically go up to the end of Omega Okada and then just stop. Like, you think I didn't notice that shit?
Well, Jericho is 2019. That was okay.
You said I might get to 2019. I don't know, maybe 2020. We'll see. Like,
yeah, when I reached out to Rich to make the theme song for this series, like, oh, this man just trying to rewatch Okada Omega.
you're gonna get up to Okada Omega and be like, I don't really see the point of doing another year after that. just gonna stop. What was that? 2018.
Yeah, the Iron Man. Or 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 falls. I've never seen an Iron Man match in New Japan.
Nor do we need to, probably, at this point. It'll be like KOPW, and it'll be Okon.
Oh, I guess KOPW does count. They've had some mini Iron Man matches.
Yeah.
Even though they don't call them that. I mean, in theory, they're basically the same thing. Some of those Takagi rule matches and shit.
No, that's different.
It's the same. It's the same.
But yeah, outside of that, a double or nothing. Yeah, my wife had to work on Memorial Day, so I was just kind of hanging out at the house, did some stuff around the house, and then I did start watching X-Men 97 on Disney Plus.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that show growing up?
Oh yeah, on Fox Kids, I was dialed into that every Saturday.
Okay, I didn't know. I mean, we're around the same age, so obviously, but yeah, I mean that. It's weird, bro. Like there's this golden era of children's animated 90s superhero shows that are very, I wouldn't say adult themed, but they deal thematically with adult. I guess it is adult themed, but it's not like, it's not like a graphic gratuitous, but they're also talking about shit that's going way over the head of like kids. And like, that's what like Batman, the animated series was like, and X-Men. And you watch it now and you're like, oh shit, they were talking about some pretty heavy shit. Like,
yeah, when you dial back on like, all right, these people don't like this certain type of people. They don't like these mutants, and they're fighting for their freedoms and their rights. Is like, what's really going on here?
It sounds like the way I feel as a New Japan fan these days.
See, I don't understand why Rich don't like X-Men. I feel like he would. Get behind the cause.
Rich doesn't like it because it's all Nintendo,
Right. It's all Rich don't watch the fake stuff. He don't watch the cartoons. Oh man.
Yeah, he's too adult for that.
How was your Memorial Day weekend?
Oh, good, man. I went to the beach a couple hours like early before anybody else showed up, and then kind of got out of there once it started to get hot, once the little kids all showed up. And then just chilled, man. Had some barbecue, watched a shit ton of movies, and then kind of felt bad because I just stayed in. We as a family stayed in and watched movies literally all day. But yeah, it is what it is. And then back to the grind today, and had to grind out one of these Super Junior shows before today's recording. And, I think the timing of everything is going to be good, though, because we pushed ourselves back one day. But the way it's lining up, we've only got the last night of A block, the last night of B block, then the semifinals, and then Dominion. So we kind of will have waiting the extra day gives us an opportunity to record with a clearer picture about how everything is probably going to turn out here.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump into the tournament. So also we'll do the same format. We'll go through each block, look at the standings. We'll talk about who's alive, who's out, and we'll kind of go through some of the advancement scenarios. I'm not going to break down every single scenario. We'll kind of go through the ones where I think are more plausible, because in the A block, there's a lot of guys at 10 points that you could do a lot of if-then math with, but I think it's pretty simple on what's going to happen there.
Has SAMHSA put anything out to kind of dumb it down for idiots like me?
I have not seen anything from SAMHSA. Chris Charlton has posted a couple things, but outside of that, today I thought about trying to post something on Twitter and be like one of the other people, kind of breaking down the scenarios. But then when I was like writing out like all the different A block scenarios, like halfway through, I was like, forget this. Let's do it on the show tonight.
One thing I want to point out before we jump into that, last week, I was on the show and I said I had not looked into this before we jumped on the show, but the question about the Dominion main event with the IWGP title being underneath the Super Junior finals. And I said, I thought that there'd been a couple times in the past where the title had been on the line on the same show. And I was like, I think like last week, I was like, I think sometime around like 96, 97, like in the mid 90s, boom, I was right. It's happened 2 times in the 1997 finals and the 1995 finals. And in both cases, the title headlined the show. And in fact, when I looked back, this is something I wasn't aware of. There were some tours. I didn't grab the specific years, but like in the early 2000s to like late 90s, there were some tours where the whole tour was called Best of the Super Juniors, the tour, but the finals weren't on the final night. Sometimes the finals were on like the third or second to last night. And then guess what was on the final night?
The title match.
A title match. So even in those cases, which was few and far between, but there were cases where the title headlined the actual, and there were actually no specific instances where the title was defended on like the first night or the second night, and then the final night was the finals. Like the title always held preeminent position over the Super Junior finals. So this is a pretty historic what they're doing here.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were just even questioning whether or not there was going to even be a title match, because like we talked about, it was just announced ahead of time for so long that the finals were happening at Dominion, and people thought, maybe Mox won't come in and defend, but they are going to do the title match, and they're going to do the finals. Finals are going to main event. And I don't know if you saw, I talked about this on Friday News Update. Desperado did an interview in Tokyo Sports saying, I was told from the start that the final was always going to be the main event. And then Kadani quote tweeted that and apologized for causing all this, disruption, confusion about the match or whatever. So,
yeah, I don't know. That was a really weird business decision because it made it, it literally made it seem thematically and narratively like the title match was less important, and that they were lowering it due to fan outcry, which is negative on the brand, negative looking on the company. It doesn't do a lot to even though they are elevating the juniors, it's like, oh, we're being forced, our hand is being forced by the fans, by the audience, when in fact, Joe Lanza, as you had mentioned last week, had discussed this on his show, that this was always the plan. And then now there's additional confirmation to kind of lend support to what he had reported. And it's like, why wouldn't you just say that this was the plan all along? Because it de-elevates the juniors by making it seem like they were a second option, when in fact this was always planned.
They were trying to pull, you fans are the authority. You.
Yeah, they were.
But let's jump into the standings and see where we're at going into the final A block night, B block night, and then what's possibly going to happen in the semifinals.
Also, once again, guys, the midweek news, very invaluable, very informative. Jeremy puts out A+ 5-star audio weekly, and you can only access that through the $5 or $10 Keeping It Strong style Patreon tiers.
That's right. So starting off with the A block here, El Desperado. He is 5-3, 10 points, so he's still alive. Night 7, he defeated Yoshinobu Kanemaru in 16 minutes and 57 seconds. Night 8, he defeated Clark Connors by disqualification, 14 minutes and 37 seconds. And then night 9, he lost to TJP in 21 minutes and 10 seconds.
We're not quite there yet to where I'm ready to declare who I think is the MVP of any one block or of the tournament, anything like that. But I think right now there's probably a very strong argument that you can make that El Desperado is that guy. And he already was having a fantastic tournament coming out of night 6, as we discussed the last couple weeks. But these performances in the last 3 nights that he's worked, night 7, night 8, night 9, some of the best matches of the entirety of the tournament. The Kanemaru match, now him and Kanemaru, obviously they've got so much history with one another, and it's sort of like the big brother, little brother thing. I mean, Jeremy, you're a big brother. You know what I'm talking about. Your brother's never going to whoop you. Doesn't matter how big he is. It's just not gonna happen. And typically that's the relationship between Kanemaru and Desperado. All time Kanemaru holds the vast majority of wins over this guy. And by hook or crook, Desperado was able to survive Kanemaru. Kanemaru was busting out triangle moonsaults and, working his ass off. And Desperado was able to pick up the win there. And then the Clark Connors match, that's one that everybody that's a New Japan fan has been really highlighting and talking about, because it was one of the wildest matches of the entirety of the tournament, just extremely violent. And it seems like it's probably leading to a potential death match main event between these two guys at the Desperado Invitational. And then the match with TJP, keeping TJP alive, do or die situation for TJP, going up against essentially the top guy, the ace in this block. And I think a lot of people, obviously, if you're listening to this show, you've been listening to Jeremy kind of plotted this thing out a while ago, saying that TJP was going to make his comeback, but he had to go through Desperado, and that was a tall order, and he was successful. But that was one of the best nights of the tournament, night 9, and one of the best main events of the entirety of the tournament as well.
Yeah, this run of this past week with Desperado, you just got a variance of different styles of matches, like you mentioned with the Kanemaru match and the history there and their team, and Suzuki-gun. That was a different style of match compared to the Clark Connors match, where that match is very similar to Connors and Drilla from last year, where there's this wild brawl. They're brawling all over the arena, and then Clark, he just saw red and was just enraged, and he could have won the match, but he just kept pummeling Desperado. And Marty Asami, who probably should have thrown the match out 10 minutes prior, finally had enough.
He should have counted those guys out way earlier, and just, dude, they're out on the floor for 7 minutes.
Yeah, and if I'm Clark, I have a big complaint. It's like we agreed to no DQ. We're brawling all over the place, and then you're at the very end, after we've done all this stuff, you're gonna DQ me. He should have just he should have awarded Clark and say, Despy can't defend himself, and given the win to Clark.
I guess. I mean, it depends. The way I saw it was that he broke the hold and he didn't get off of him. He just kept hitting him. And you have to, if the referee tells you to break, you're supposed to break. That's one thing I've never liked. There was this period in WWE in the mid 2000s, around early to mid 2000s, where guys would get to the ropes, and instead of breaking the hold, they would just pull the guy away from the ropes, and the referee would just let it go. And I'm like, you got to let go of the fucking hold. You can't just pull the dude back to the middle of the ring. What the fuck? That'd be like if Okada put somebody in the what was that shit? The
money clip.
They get to the ropes and he's like, nah. He just pulls them back and then just sits their ass down.
So that had that match there. Desperado win by DQ, and then that great main event with TJP, which we'll talk about him in a little bit, but he really stamped his survival there by beating Desperado, and that was another great standout match for the tournament. So like you mentioned, Desperado, one of the MVPs of the A block, been killing it every night, different styles of matches with different styles of opponents, and very highly likely that he will advance to the semifinals.
Yeah, and if you notice earlier in the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned that typically 6 or 7 wins, aka 12 to 14 points, that's where you're in the money. That's where you're projected to go through to the next round of the tournament. And in this block, they've kept it very parity based. And once TJP had hit that 0-4, I counted him out. I was like, oh, he's done mathematically probably here. And Jeremy's like, I wouldn't be so sure. And lo and behold, he's sitting here at 8 points with this win over Desperado. And it's no coincidence that the top 5 guys who are all tied are all sitting at 10 points going into the final night of block action. So keeping those hopes alive. Jeremy called this way ahead of time. I was the naysayer and the doubter here, but it looks like very likely someone with 10 points potentially probably will go through in this block.
Yeah, man, you didn't see the vision. You didn't want to believe in TJP.
I did. I mean, he was one of the guys in the early goings of the predictions where I said that I could see him going through just because of the story they were telling earlier prior to the tournament. But once he started taking all those losses, I'm like, all right, well, this guy's not the leader. That's the story they're telling. And, that's that. And maybe we're doing something else, but I was wrong.
Well, like you mentioned, there's several people with 10 points. Another person is last year's runner-up, Teton. He's 5-3, night 7. He defeated Kevin Knight in 8 minutes and 24 seconds. Night 8, he defeated Kosei Fujita, 7 minutes and 1 second. And then on night 9, he dropped a loss to Yoshinobu Kanemaru in 8 minutes and 48 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, Teton, in some ways, his tournament somewhat reminds me of the one that he had last year, where he's just consistently very, very good. And he keeps having proficient matches, and he's one of the most consistent workers of the entirety of the tournament. But, they're really putting over that Yave Immortal finish. And last year they did a great job establishing that as, a difference maker in the tournament, and it's continued to remain the same. And thus far, I was sort of thinking in the course of the tournament that maybe he would have a different trajectory, a different path than he had the year prior, but he's pretty much stayed the course. He's stayed very close to the similar booking, similar spot on the cards night after night that he was last year. And so they're kind of creating the image that what happened last year could easily be repeated here in this year for Teton. I don't think it's going to happen because it looks like on the final night he's got TJP, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is probably one of the big deciding matches of the A block. But, like you mentioned, Teton, he beat Kevin Knight, he beat Kosei Fujita. And then the match that really had to basically screw him here to keep him from advancing in the tournament was the Kanemaru match, where Kanemaru basically cheated, used his mask, spun it around, and rolled this guy up. And he needed a monkey, or not a monkey, but a banana peel slip loss here to make him viable for the final night. So, it kind of seems like whoever wins between that match very likely is going through between him and TJP.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at those scenarios when we preview the final A block night. But yeah, I don't think he's going to get through, but he's still alive. Yeah, if he wins that, he's possibly getting through to the finals. And like you mentioned, that Kanemaru loss, pretty much all the heels in this tournament going after his mask and untying it, loosening it up. And so that was a downfall here for him in this matchup, and Kanemaru was able to take advantage of that and get the quick win over him. So that left Teton stuck at 10 points. Had he won that, had he get the 12 points, he would have been in a nice, comfortable spot to advance and go on to the semifinals. So yeah, that's last A block night. He's going to have to fight really hard to get into a position to get into the semifinals. So another man that is at 10 points is the former GCW World Champion Blake Christian. On night 7, he lost to Hayata in 10 minutes and 20 seconds. On night 8, he lost to TJP in 15 minutes and 52 seconds. And then on night 9, he defeated Bushi 6 minutes and 16 seconds. And the reason I say former GCW World Champion is because he apparently, I guess, was stripped by the GCW commissioner right now, which I believe is Matt Cardona. So I guess that was announced on Twitter that Blake Christian would be stripped of GCW World title, ending a very long, lengthy title reign for him with multiple, I think he had over 40 defenses with the title. And didn't have the best week here, dropping 2 losses to Hayata and TJP. And it seemed like Blake Christian was going to be in position to capture one of the semifinal spots, starting with a very strong winning streak that a lot of diehard Puro fans weren't in favor of. But since then, has been on a little bit of a slump, dropping to Hayata and TJP, and then bouncing back there with Bushi. So similar to Teton and Desperado, Blake Christian is still in the hunt to get in the semifinal. He's still alive, and like I said, we'll talk about it when we look at the A block night, but he does have a chance, if he can win and get to 12 points, to be one of the semifinalists. Also, there's a lot of tiebreaker scenarios. So if you have multiple people going in at 12 or multiple people going in at 10, there's going to be a lot of tiebreaker scenarios based off of stuff earlier on in the tournament that's going to really determine where he's at in the tournament. As far as the standout stuff for him this week, probably the TJP match out of these three was Blake's best matchup here. And there's the whole thing with Blake, teasing to be a part of, United Empire after that one multi-man tag that they had, and he's throwing the crowns up, and he's trying to, sway TJP over earlier in the match, but TJP was having none of that, and TJP ends up getting the win over Blake Christian on night 8. So yeah, Blake Christian, I think he's been very good addition to the tournament. I think he's been another top performer in the block. I know people feel a certain way about him and are not huge fans of him because he's in the Converse, but I think he's been awesome, and if he's available and they can bring him back for more tours, I think he'd be a great regular addition to have in the show. So for those who are listening to the audio only version, Young Boy has stepped away for a bit, so I'm just gonna keep. Oh, there he goes.
I'm back. I had a bathroom emergency, so I had to step away. Thanks for holding down the fort there, Jeremy. So did you talk Blake Christian, I assume?
Yeah, I just got done stalling as much as I could talking about Blake Christian without you interjecting.
Well, I sent you a message telling you to keep going, and I have full faith and confidence in you here to be able to fill the space with compelling audio. But yeah, so you finished wrapping up on Blake Christian?
Yeah, did you have any thoughts about him and his performance?
I'll keep it short since I'm sure you probably covered all the bases. And I don't want to repeat all the same talking points that I've had over the past few weeks. A couple things that I've noticed, though, there still seems to be this very negative, deep Puro, Shinihon freak like sentiment where people don't get the gimmick. They don't understand, what he's doing here, and they feel like he's an indie-rific worker. And for me, I just feel like he's a lot sharper than he's been in the past. I feel like he's a lot more assured and confident worker than he was from what we'd seen from him stateside in the past. And I feel like I've actually seen him grow quite a bit in the course of this tour, and it's been a good thing for him. I don't know if you mentioned, it's probably in the news, but he was stripped of the GCW world title. Did you mention that? Yeah,
I mentioned that yeah, I guess Matt Cardona stripped him of the title. I'm not sure the reason why, but
it does Matt Cardona have power in the Game Changer Wrestling?
Yeah, I think he's currently the commissioner right now.
Oh, good. I'm glad every wrestling company in the West needs a talking head, commissioner, president, GM, owner, blah, blah, blah. But the funny thing with Blake Christian is he fulfills a similar role on this side of the bracket as Kushida did on the other side, where it's like he's a early front runner, lots of success, gets to a certain point and starts stalling out. And there seems to be, if you've watched a lot of these tournaments that Gato has booked, you see certain tropes and things that he does and that he likes to kind of formulate in the course of his booking. And this is just one of them. An outsider, make him look strong, give him a lot of early wins, some upsets, and then down the second half of the tournament kind of slow them down. So the win over Bushi, that was was a gimme win. That's one that was very easy for him to pick up. We've talked about how Bushi is sort of like at this point a spoiler, and he's not really spoiled. I mean, if he picked up another win over Blake Christian, that wouldn't be spoiling anything. That just keeps them parity based. So Blake Christian gets that win after having a few disappointing losses and gets him back to a respectable 10 points. So he's tied with everybody else, but keep in mind, he was 4-0 for like the first 4 nights. And now, several losses later, he does not have momentum behind him.
Yeah. So the last guy that's with 10 points is the GHC National Openweight Champion, Hayata. So on night 7, he defeated Blake Christian, 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Night 8, he defeated Kevin Knight in 8 minutes and 16 seconds. And then on night 9, he defeated Kosei Vegeta, 8 minutes and 57 seconds. So 3 match win streak here for Hayata.
Yeah, I mean, he took some kind of surprising losses in the early stages of the tournament, which I thought he was going to be in a similar role to Blake Christian, where he's going to be picking up early wins and then maybe peter out down the second half. And it's sort of been the opposite. He had mixed results in the early part of the tournament. He'd win some, he'd lose some, and now he's picking up wins to get back to the 10 points. And the funny thing with Hayata, and I know we've talked about this, like, to me, he's just a guy. I have no connection to him or his work in Noah or anything, but every time he wins, I'm shocked. And every time he loses, I'm shocked. Because on the one hand, he's like the national champion, the secondary title holder of Noah. So I'm like, damn, really having him lose to, whoever. I at this point, I don't remember who picked up wins over him, but it was definitely people where I was like, I don't know if that's going to build to anything down the line. And then you turn around here and it's like every time he picks up a win, I'm shocked because he's just such a non-factor to me. I'm like, oh, fuck. Blake Christian, he wins. Oh, okay. Kevin Knight. Oh, shit. Vegeta, like, and I guess it makes sense. You need to. This is much better than some of the booking that we've seen from outside guys in the past, from partner promotions, namely Noah. It feels like Hayata, in a certain sense, is being booked stronger than Kato Kiyomiya was in the G1 last year.
Yeah, he kind of is. I guess get a really respects that GHC National Openweight title.
I guess so. But at the same time, like, I don't have anything to talk about the work. I mean, the work isn't bad. It's not great. There's nothing stand out. He's just there. Like, he to me, Hayata is a shindy Japanese, like, lower level indie worker type guy. I don't know how he's holding a prominent position in Noah, because he just doesn't come off to me as like a top star or guy with tons of charisma or great work rate or anything. Like, I don't even like his look. I don't fucking get it,
Yeah, I don't get why they would give him that title. I don't get like why Gato chose to put him in this tournament. Like, there's been like no really like redeeming qualities about him. Like, he's just been, like you say, he's a jag. He's been fine and hasn't stood out. There's no one match where I'm like, man, that was a great outing from Hayata.
Absolutely.
But here he is at 10 points. He's still alive, and we'll talk about his chances a little bit later. So next up, the Jet, Kevin Knight. He's 4-4 with 8 points. Night 7, he lost to Teton, 8 minutes, 24 seconds. Night 8, he lost to Hayata, 8 minutes and 16 seconds. And then he ended this streak here with a win over former LA Dojo compadre Clark Connors, 9 minutes and 42 seconds.
Yeah, so now we're at that second tier of guys that are still alive. Kevin Knight, Clark Connors, TJP, they're all at 4-4. So they're technically alive, but they're holding on by the skin of their teeth, right? And there's a lot of scenarios where they'll most likely be knocked out. And Kevin Knight, you look at the Teton loss, that's a big tiebreaker loss. Hayata, another big tiebreaker loss. And then the Clark Connors one, that's actually a beneficial win for him because they're tied. And so again, the tiebreaker situation there. Kevin, another guy that we've sung his praises all throughout the review of this tournament, where not only is he just the athletic freak he's always been, but like he's come into his own in terms of smoothness, great work, figuring out the things, the little things in between the bell to bell that make a worker great. And he's kind of separated his look a little bit to where, yeah, he's still an intergalactic jet setter, but he's not quite, the young boy that he came off as in the last year's tournament, where he's sort of becoming his own guy and really established that jumping spike DDT as this new finisher. I don't know if I love that move, but the way he performs it is still impressive. I think that down the line, he'll probably develop an even better finisher, but for the time being, it does the job. Last thing I'll say is the match with Clark Connors was really good, and those guys have a ton of history, not just from their LA Dojo days, but going back to even recent history. The match they had in the finals of the All-Star
Junior Festival
in the USA was really great. And so this kind of was just another chapter in a long-standing feud between those guys.
Yeah. And also, didn't they both train? Were they also part of Buddy Wayne's academy also together?
I don't know. That sounds right, but I couldn't say off the top of my head, but I think they both trained from that region of the country. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that match was really good, and saw some aggression there from Kevin Knight to kind of deal with, the aggression from Clark Connors. And the interesting note that everybody's talking about is post-match. Seems like Clark Connors has offered a spot in the War Dogs to Kevin Knight, and obviously there's the LA Dojo connection there. Most of those guys are in the War Dogs, and so there's a lot of people speculating, is Kevin going to join? Is he going to turn on Kushida? What's the deal? So it's a little interesting wrinkle that came from that match.
Yeah, did Kushida already beat Drilla Maloney on their side of the block?
No, Drilla beat Kushida.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And well, I guess we'll talk about it. We'll talk about that. Yeah, you're right. I just I'm trying to recall because there's so many fucking matches, but
yeah,
that would be a situation where if they both won, that might have entitled them to a title match. Maybe this one alone could too as well. I don't know.
Yeah, we've seen in the past where just one guy wins and that they still potentially get a title match. So, with Dominion around the corner, I think we're going to probably get like a 3 or 4 team scenario: Jet Setters, War Dogs, Eagles, and Vegeta, and probably another team. But there's a lot of people there that pin the champions that they could do something with there. So speaking of Clark Connors, he's also 4-4 with 8 points. Night 7 defeating Bushi, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Night 8, he had the disqualification loss to Desperado that we talked about. And then night 9, like we just mentioned, he lost to Kevin Knight. So a big tiebreaker loss, like you mentioned, to Kevin Knight. And then, like I mentioned earlier, with that, seeing red, that really screwed him up against Desperado. That would have been a big win there. And he would have probably, had a better chance. He would be at least sitting at 10 if he had beaten Desperado, and would have had a little bit better of a chance to punch his ticket.
Yeah, I mean, Clark Connors last year during this tournament started to kind of develop the fledgling version of what his character has become in this tournament. And so we've seen over the course of the year how the War Dog persona has kind of come to light, how it's been developed, and now it's here, basically in its fully formed version. The win over Bushi, that was to be expected. Good win there, gets him up. The interesting thing with the Kevin Knight match that we forgot to mention was the common opponent. Obviously, everybody has common opponents in this tournament, but a lot of the narrative in this block really revolves around Desperado. And considering the fact that Clark Connors had just narrowly failed to defeat Desperado in a very heated match, and earlier in the tournament, Kevin Knight was successful in actually defeating Desperado, that added a little bit of insult to injury there. We discussed it a little bit, but I mean, we didn't really dive too deep into it. So, I mean, like the Desperado Clark Connors match, these guys from the offset, like, brawled all over the building. They started off with a a chair jousting contest. And they spent the vast majority of the match on the outside. That's the one thing, me personally, and this is just my nitpick, and maybe there are other people that don't have quite the same issue with it that I do, but I didn't like the idea that the referee never even started a count for the majority of the time that they're out there. And I get it, there's a point where in the course of the night where, the commentators are talking about the match, and Walker is basically saying like that the referee, who is it, Marty Asami?
Yeah.
Marty's giving them a lot of rope and a lot of leeway. And it's like, yeah, I get that. That's great. But they don't do this in every single match. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a round robin tournament. So how can we give special treatment in kayfabe to one particularly heated match and not to the rest of them? Plus they were out there for so fucking long, but without a count, that I like at a certain point, it does become a little bit egregious, but, I doubt everybody else has the same issues with that that I do. I'm sure for most people, they're willing to overlook that in favor of the violence and the aggression and the heat that was developed in this match. And the crowd was certainly really, really, really into this, because everything that was happening, you were hearing like, like the, and shrieks from the women, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite matches of the tournament.
Yeah, and the other good thing that kind of comes from it is it seems like they are setting up something with them, and the Despy Invitational is happening the day after Dominion. So I'm assuming that that'll probably be the main event or one of the featured matches. It's like Despy and Clark in some kind of wild death match, and it does seem like that card I think is going to be Mystery Vortex. We're not going to know anything until the show happens, but I could definitely see those two having some kind of death match on there.
That's a great way to draw me in to want to spend money on a pay-per-view, is not tell me who's on it, not give me a card, and just say, give us your money. That's a great thing. I can't wait to do that.
Desperado's on it. That's all you need to know.
And now that we're on the subject, just kind of shooting off a little bit here, a lot of complaints from other podcasts and New Japan fans about the fact that after waiting several weeks now, that there's been no update on the All Together card being made available on either Wrestle Universe or NJPW World. And it really seems like you basically have to pay, what was it, $30?
Yeah, $31.
You have to pay the $30 or whatever to get it on a Bima, if in fact you live in a country where that service is allowed, because most of the world, it seems like, is actually region code locked out of it. So unless you know a back channel way to pull that shit up, or if you know a way to get on a VPN, I don't know. To me, it's a little perplexing. I understand that they're great at really locking down their IP and stuff, but at the same time, like, geez, the fans want to see the shows, and and plus New Japan is continuing to include their own pay-per-views, while everyone is paying the $9.99 or whatever. And so this Despy Invitational is another paid event, and we gotta cover it, so we're probably gonna have to pay to fucking watch that shit too.
Yeah.
And it's not like we can call Fight and tell Fight to give us a free passcode.
Yeah, I wonder if we can get some passcodes for these New Japan World pay-per-views.
I don't know who we would talk to about that.
Honestly, I don't even think the system's set up to probably even do that.
I don't either. I don't think it is. I have to talk to Tanahashi and be like, hey.
Yeah, my last conversation with Tanahashi went so well. But moving on to guys that are totally eliminated, no chance.
And talk about TJP.
Oh, my bad. I scrolled past him.
You're absolutely right. Guys with no chance. TJP.
No, yeah. So the last guy here that does have a chance, and who I do think is going to be advancing, TJP, 4-4, 8 points. Night 7 defeating Kosei Vegeta. Night 8 defeating Blake Christian. Night 9 defeating El Desperado. So also it was do or die for him, make or break every single night. So came out here and rolled off 3 victories in a row, and is now sitting at 8 points. And it's in a spot where he's definitely going to have to win on the last night. Like you mentioned, he has Teton, which is a great person to have on the last night for him. So he does have a chance to get into the semifinals.
Yeah, some big wins, some meaningful wins over top talent in this tournament. If he does make his way through, which I think Jeremy has him projected to do that, it's one of the better comeback stories in recent years, very reminiscent of what Sho did the year that he went to the finals of the Super Juniors against Hiromu. TJP is always great. I mean, he's just so, dare I say, maybe potentially the most technically sound guy in the tournament. Definitely for me in the A block, but maybe for the whole tournament. And I mean, we're talking about a tournament that includes guys like Robbie Eagles and Kushida, and TJP is in the same league, if not maybe a smidge above them. I don't know. But narratively, there's this story where, he was losing all his matches. Now he's come back. He had teased that if he couldn't get it done, then someone else would come to help him, kind of alluding to the idea of the Aswang. So I don't know. Maybe that is still happening. Maybe it's not. And that is something with the backstage comments that I feel a little perplexed as to what TJP's ultimate goal is, because I feel like there are a plethora of things going on here that don't quite work for me. Just not even just beyond the fact that I personally, as much as I like TJP as a worker, I don't buy or believe in him as the leader of, or the Capitan of the United Empire. But putting that aside, I don't really always know what TJP's even talking about, because when he's backstage, he says, one of the big things that he always points to is he's going to step up and he'll be an open weight guy and he'll traverse the weight classes. He'll do all the tournaments, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. But then, then he'll talk about like the mystical stuff where he's like maybe going to lean into the Aswang and, the undead, like mystical, shit. But then he's also talking about being this student of Inoki and really knowing what true strong style actually is. And it's sort of like there's an ill-defined character there where like there are all these different elements, but they're not cohesive. And, I'm glad that they've done the booking to where he's got a redemption arc, and that's great. But I don't believe or buy this guy. Like, let's say he goes through, let's say he wins this, right? Let's say he wins the whole Super Juniors. Where are we going with that? You know what I mean? And I'm not projecting that he does succeed, but because I personally don't see him as being a guy that can headline a Dominion card personally, but I definitely think he's going to make it to the semifinals at this point. That's become apparent. But what is the trajectory of the story of the United Empire, and why are we putting so much investment into the TJP arc? I just don't know what the payoff ultimately actually is. I know a lot of fans were anticipating like Francesco Akira to actually usurp TJP in his quest to be the guy, that it would become apparent that Francesco Akira was actually truly the guy by demonstrating it with his actions without having to say all the shit that TJP was saying. And maybe that was where the story was going. I don't know. But I also feel like that's almost fan servicey, like retcon, like that people are trying to will the guy that they want to see be the leader because they're perplexed at the idea that New Japan is so invested in the TJP experiment. And to me, this is a junior version of what, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, because I respect TJP as a worker. I do. I think he's an incredible worker, and I don't mean to lump him into this category in the same way as these guys, but we've seen over the past year where guys like Tamatonga, guys like David Finley, guys like, who else am I missing that they went with over the last year? Hikuleo.
where like it just doesn't work, and it doesn't take a genius to know that this story is not going to give you the results that you're wanting. And there's a huge narrative in this block revolving around TJP, and I'm still kind of questioning why.
Yeah, I think the whole layout of the story has been kind of weird. Like, he was on this huge losing streak, and he's trying to prove he's the captain, and then he beats Taichi, which is like a pretty big deal. Like, he beats a heavyweight and beats Taichi. He's like, a credible heavyweight. And he goes into the tournament and then goes on this losing streak, going 0-4, almost being completely eliminated, going into the, the fourth A block night. And now you're doing this whole rally from behind thing, like you mentioned. Like, he's teasing the Oswald, and he's talking about Inoki, and he's talking about being the captain, and like it's all over the place. And like I think it's kind of hard to really kind of sink your teeth into what he has going on. I feel like either they should have continued the losing streak. He shouldn't have beat Taichi, and he should have came into the tournament with a losing streak, maybe only lose 3, and then he picks it up and reels off 6. Or they probably maybe should have done a Fergal Devitt kind of thing, of where he beats Taichi and now he's going to go on this crazy winning streak, and he's going to like clear the block out, and he's going to be, A1, and he's going to be his top guy for the United Empire, for New Japan, because he beat a heavyweight, and he's the captain now. But that's not the route they went. So yeah, it's kind of hard to get behind what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the story they were going to tell, right, and that you mentioned, something akin to Prince Devitt, and keep in mind when Prince Devitt ascended during, what was that, the 2013 G1 or Super Juniors, 2012, 2013?
One of those years, yeah, around that time.
Okay. He cheated for a majority of the tournament. So it wasn't like, even though he went undefeated and all that, and I think he faced, if I recall, he faced Alex Shelley in the finals there.
Yeah.
Because someone got injured, right?
Yeah, I think Taguchi got hurt.
Yeah, it might have been Taguchi. It might have been Kushida. I don't remember. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But the reason I brought that up is because, yeah, they were showing that he was dominant, but he also had all the guys from the early Bullet Club iteration helping him night after night after night. That's not what they're doing with TJP. If they decided, you know what, this year we're going to go, and again, I think that with Dominion having the Super Junior Finals main event, kind of throws a chink in the armor of this idea. But if they did what you had mentioned, where they decided, we're going to go all in on this guy and tell a story that there's this unrealized potential he's always had, and he's now ascended to that level, and then he just runs through everybody because he's technically the best guy in the block, and I think he has the chops to do that. That's a story I could definitely get behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, but they didn't do that. They had him go on the losing streak. That's why last week, where I was saying, like, to me, narratively speaking, there's just more, and I'm not a hater of TJP. I just think that there's more money in the idea that this guy ascended to a certain level on a certain night, but he couldn't carry it out in the Super Juniors when it mattered, and he's not what he proclaimed himself to be. And instead, what they're doing here is they're having him redeem himself, but only enough to get to the semifinals, and then he's gonna fall a little bit short before the finals. And where does that leave the United Empire? Where does that leave him? What's the point? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a good contained story, but the payoff is lacking. The execution is lacking. And it's at least when Sho did this story, he made it to the finals. And truth be told, he probably should have beat Hiromu that year, and he didn't. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little confused about all of this, and it just seems like it's one of those things that Geto likes to do in these tournaments.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the big kind of wrinkle here is the finals being the Dominion main event, and like, had this been any other year where you have your own Super Junior finals, I could see TJP main eventing a show like that. But to put him in the Dominion main event slot over Jon Moxley, even if he is facing Hiromu, I don't know if that's the right call.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say like the ticket's already sold. I don't know how true that is, but maybe there is some validity there. And it won't make so much of a huge difference as to who they put in. And maybe there is an outside shot. I want to hedge my bets because I don't want to say that this guy has no possibility of winning or making it to the finals, but it just seems highly unlikely given the level of the stage and given the style of booking. I mean, let's say he did go through. Let's say he did win. Okay, great. Still lost his first 4 matches in the tournament. that doesn't speak to the idea that there was a ton of confidence from the booker to have given him that sort of trajectory or style of story.
Yeah, unless he's just trying to set up a lot of challengers for him.
Right, which I don't think that's the case because, not too far from now, we're going into G1 season and these juniors are going to take a big back seat until after the fall or whatever.
Yeah.
Or into the fall.
So now we have 3 guys who are completely out of the running here. Bushi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Kosei Fujita. So Bushi, he's 3-5 with 6 points. So the highest he can get to is 8, which is not going to be enough to get him through. Night 7, he lost to Clark Connors. And then night 8, he defeated Kanemaru, and night 9, losing to Blake Christian.
I don't think I'm going to have too many talking points about either of these guys moving forward. We've pretty much kind of somewhat discussed the matches. Kanemaru, though, he's just, to me, he's a tried and true vet in this group. And anytime you need him to go out there and get that win to play the spoiler similar to Bushi, he can do it. He's known for all sorts of hijinks and shenanigans and, attacking the limbs and setting up stories in that sort of manner. But on certain nights where he's, tasked to really go like he did against Desperado, he can do it. So he's kind of been a jack of all trades, still a cheating master heel, but, even though he's aligned with Bullet Club and with House of Torture, almost virtually none of the real House of Torture shenanigans, which has been at least a bit of a relief.
Yeah, it's honestly, I feel like Kanemaru is the one guy where he's been exactly the same, no matter whether he's Five Guys, Suzuki-gun, or House of Torture. Like, he just does the same thing. He's like, I've got my gimmick. It works for me. I'm not changing. And so, yeah, he's been fun to watch. And yeah, night 7, he lost to Despy. Night 8, he lost to Bushi. And night 9, he defeated Teton. So like you said, we talked about that already. Had that, cheated to beat Teton and really screw up Teton's chances of getting into the semifinals. And then the Japanese young punk, Kosei Fujita, he lost to TJP on night 7. Night 8, he lost to Teton. And then night 9, he lost to Hayata. So he lost 3 in a row. And we had a question here from Death Triangle 720. Says, do you
God, I completely jumped over Bushi and just talked about
You did. Death Triangle 720 says, do you think it's a missed opportunity not having Fujita be a contender at the top of the block, or have him where he's with a junior tag program after BOSJ is over?
Did he? I thought he beat Clark Connors.
He did, yeah. So he beat Connors, and so I think they are going to get a tag title program with Vegeta and Eagles challenging War Dogs.
That's what I was thinking. So appreciate the question there, Death Triangle. I think you might have forgotten that. No worries. But I do think it's a little bit surprising that he's at 2-4 or 2-6. Sorry. He's got 4 points in the block, but it's like I've said in several weeks prior, there's so many good, talented wrestlers in these tournaments, and you want hypothetically everybody to do well, but you also don't want a predictable tournament with 100% parity across the board, and somebody's got to do jobs, somebody's got to win, And how do you navigate all of that while also keeping the guys that you want strong and navigating the, like the politics between these various outside companies that are involved in the tournament as well. It's tough. And if I was the booker, would I have made Kosei Fujita the lowest scoring guy in the tournament? No. Do I think it hurts him though? No. I still feel like even though he's got the lowest point total, to me, I feel like he's one of the strongest competitors in the tournament. I would probably say, even though he hasn't main evented the same number of matches as some of the other guys, and so therefore hasn't had as many long matches, night in and night out, I mean, he might be the most consistent guy outside of like Desperado.
Yeah, I thought he's been great. The new look, the music, his work has been really fun to watch. And like you said, if I was booking, he would have more points than at least Bushi, and he does have a chance to tie Bushi at 6th last night. But I would have had him up in that at least 8-point mix there. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of politics there. You had a Noah guy in here. You have a ROH guy in here. You got Teton in here. So there's a lot of guys to play around here within this block. But I feel like it comes back to the whole problem that New Japan has of booking younger talent. Let's get the gas going. I feel like you need to kind of skip over this kind of, earn your dues period with these guys and have them go through and start at the bottom. I feel like some of these guys just need to go in and just push them and have them, book them as top guys.
Devil's advocate, I somewhat see what you're saying, but on the opposite end, how many years did Kevin Knight and Clark Connors not even make it into these tournaments, and then when they did, not do overly well? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong or a right way to do it. I think whatever is going to produce the best results overall for the company. And maybe it is what you're saying, Jeremy. Maybe, they're missing out on the opportunity to build and make a star here. And it would be better to kind of sacrifice some of these guys that are probably due, so that this guy could get established. But for whatever reason, they're not seeing him in that light to 100% pull the trigger on him just this very second. And there used to be an old adage on the show, never doubt Gato, but over the past few years, we've kind of come to doubt Gato. And so I don't know if this is the right way to go. I don't want to make excuses for the guy, because I do think that they've missed the mark on certain young talent, like you said, but it is a little surprising.
Yeah. Well, let's jump over to the B block now. So on top of the block, we have 4 guys that are still alive. Everybody else is mathematically eliminated. So first, the Bone Soldier, Taiji Ishimori. He's 6-2 with 12 points. Night 8, defeating Ninja Mac. Night 9, defeating Drilla Maloney. And night 10, he defeated the junior champion Show.
Yeah, so here we are in a separate block, a tale of 2 blocks. So in this block, 12 or 10 is going to be like the cutoff, basically, for this block. And in certain respects, we got some guys we'll talk about it who are already at 10 points and they're mathematically eliminated. So a lot less of a parity based block as compared to the A block. Ishimori has been interesting because he's a Bullet Club guy. He's a heel, but he's also kind of in the same space as some of the other Bullet Club and House of Torture guys like Show and Drilla Maloney, who he faced both of those guys recently and essentially had to play the quasi baby face in both of those instances. And but then on the other nights he'll be facing like Hiromu and
Ninja Mac.
People, Ninja Mac and people like that, and still have to be a heel, but he's not quite implementing the same level of chicanery that those guys that I mentioned earlier are using. So Ishimori, I mean, he's very often he does well in these tournaments. He goes deep. He didn't do so great last year because what was it? He got injured.
Yeah.
What was that? Yeah. He faced that injury and everything like that. And that kind of prevented him from, fulfilling what a lot of people saw him as having a great tournament. And here he is, and he's still alive on the final, going into the final night. And I think it's going to come down to what on the final night's him and Hiromu.
Hold on, let me see. The final B block night is him and Hiromu are in the main event.
Yeah, so and we'll see. We'll talk about the different scenarios, but I mean that could even potentially be we talked about it last week, like they both get through type situation depending on how things go. So it is possible, but I thought Ishimori, I personally have not been in love with Ishimori's work for a while now. It became less of the wild athleticism that he used to display and high speed in the earlier days of his New Japan run. And it's become more methodical, more, submission based, ground based. And that theme has kind of continued, but when called upon to have a great match, he can still do it. And I'm pretty sure on that final night, him and Hiromu will do that.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good this past week. The Drilla match, he really tore up Drilla's arm there. Drilla's still kind of suffering from the after effects of the torn bicep earlier this year. And so, like you mentioned, Ishimori kind of quasi-baby face in that match, but really took it to Drilla, tore that arm up, and was able to work on that injury there. And then, of course, throw him a too sweet afterwards. We're in the same faction, but I almost, retore your bicep. And then the show match, there was a lot of House of Torture shenanigans there. You had Yujiro up and down the match, trying to help Show get the win. And so it was a very important matchup there. And Ishimori, he was able to, outmaneuver these guys at the very end and hit Show with the Bloody Cross. And that win there knocked Show out. So a lot of people rejoiced there and really locked Ishimori into be in a good spot to claim a semifinal spot.
Yeah. And, I didn't love that match, but it was good for what it was. But down the stretch, there were so many like crazy things going on and the crowd was so into it because the stakes of the match were so high. And that is one of the positives, especially in a near the end of a tournament scenario where House of Torture, you hate you hate the antics. But then when it comes down to like the meaningful moments, the crowd gets so wrapped up into it because you don't want these guys to go through. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And when they don't, the payoff is very worthwhile. So yeah, Ishimori gets through and, I'm pretty much slotting him right now. And I guess we'll talk about it, but I think he's going to be one of the semifinalists regardless.
Well, the guy he'll be facing on that last B block night also has 12 points. Hiromu Takahashi, night 8, he got the forfeit win over the injured Francisco Akira, who's out of the rest of the tournament. And then on night 9, he defeated Robbie Eagles in a great matchup, 22 minutes and 26 seconds. Then night 10, defeating Drilla Maloney in 19 minutes and 23 seconds.
Yeah, Hiromu has... he went through his dry spell in the early portions of the tournament, kind of turned things around and has started to put in better performances and have better matches and get some of these big wins. One thing if I've noticed, though, is that he's not dominant this year the way he has been in years past, where he's hitting people, tapping everybody out with D, or he's hitting everybody with Time Bomb or Time Bomb 2, and he's getting these dominant wins. Oftentimes here he's winning by the skin of his teeth, and oftentimes it's via roll up. So it's almost like he's having to go deeper into his bag of tricks to win these matches. The night 9 match with Robbie Eagles was just fantastic, and the pace they kept, I started to really wonder. They got a lot of time. It's probably one of the longer matches of the tournament. They went just over 22 minutes. I was wondering if we were going to see our first tease or potential time limit draw. It didn't come to that, but for my money, I thought that this was the match of the tournament thus far, and just an incredible example of what we used to see on the regular when it comes to Best of the Super Juniors.
Yeah, match was awesome. Robbie, I feel like was on another level here, and just really, tore apart Hiromu's leg and was so vicious. And obviously, Robbie's game plan is always targeting the leg, but like we mentioned before, it's different. Like he finds new and creative ways to attack the leg, get into the Ron Miller special, and he just had a whole other edge here because also this was a very important matchup. All these guys were, tied going into points in this match, and had Robbie won, he would have been at 10 points. So very important match in the block. And so he was just giving it its all. And there were so many times where he got Hiromu in the Ron Miller special, and Hiromu was literally, crying, grabbing Marty Asami's arm, biting his arm and refusing to tap, and just would just drag himself to the ropes. But, he was in so much pain, and Robbie, there was a big sense of urgency. He was so aggressive, and he was just going for it all. Turbo backpack, everything he could do to try and put down Hiromu, but Hiromu just barely squeaked by. Like you mentioned, he does the Hiromu roll and gets kind of the banana peel win over Robbie Eagles.
Yeah, just incredible stuff. I can't do more than just give it the highest recommendation. They've had really good matches in the past with each other. I would dare to say this might be the best Robbie Eagles and Hiromu match. I'd have to look through the histories. I don't know. Interestingly enough, I believe the only time that Robbie has ever beat Hiromu was in Super Juniors. And I think it was almost like to the day several years prior that Eagles had beat Hiromu in the tournament. But I think that brings all time. I think that brings Hiromu up to like 5-1 versus Eagles. So for whatever reason, he just has Robbie Eagles' number. And then, Hiromu beat Drilla Maloney. One of the really surprising aspects of this match was he got hit with the Drilla Killer.
Bro, I thought that was it. I was watching it this morning. I was getting ready for work, and Drilla, he was working over the injured knee that Robbie left for him, and then towards the end there, because they did an excellent job building the Drilla Killer pile driver this year, and commentary's been putting it over, and they've really made this thing like bad luck fall levels of like you get hit with it and you're done, and
you're done. That's it.
Yeah, and Drilla hit him, and the crowd gasped. They were like he hit. He hits him with the Drilla Killer, and it's like 1, 2, and then Hiromu just barely gets his foot on the bottom rope. I was like, damn, I thought Drilla had him.
Yeah, very close. He got his foot on the rope. So, in recent succession, both members of the War Dog hit their finish on the top two guys in their block, and were both undone by rope break scenarios. So maybe those guys need to exercise a little bit more ring generalship, a little bit more ring awareness, and make sure that when they have someone hurt, they don't get to the ropes that way. But regardless, I thought that this was the match of the night for this evening, and one of the better matches. And so Hiromu, so many years he's been like the MVP night after night, and I don't know if I could say up to this point he's had the type of tournament that we've come to expect out of Hiromu Takahashi, but some of these performances during this past week have been top tier. Certainly the Eagles match for sure.
Yeah. So moving on to the people at 10 points who are alive. First, Doki, who is 5-3. So night 8, he lost to Sho. Night 9, he got his forfeit win over Francesco Akira. And then at night 10, he defeated Kushida. He tapped out Kushida 12 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah, so the Sho match, interestingly enough, full of House of Torture shenanigans. But Doki, and I know that I come off as like a Doki shill. I know I come off as like a Doki homer, but like it's not lying when I say that this guy is so fucking good. And he was able to take many of the same elements that several other individuals in this tournament have had to face and was able to turn it into a worthwhile match where a lot of other folks put in the same position, I just don't think could get the same level of quality out of 2024 level show, you know? So, I mean, hats off to Doki for being able to accomplish that. I was disappointed with the loss. With that win, you know, we'd probably be talking about a 12-point Doki.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the talking points for Doki year after year is like, is he going to beat his previous year's point total? And every year it's like he's topping out at 6. And so I wanted him to get this win so we could get to 8, right? Didn't get the win, but then I realized I was like, oh fuck, he's gonna get automatic 2 points the next night by a forfeit. That sucks. Like, that's not what I want for Doki. Like, I know it's 8, but it's not real 8. Like, he didn't actually beat Francesco Akira, so I was like, that's kind of lame. But then he turns around and he beats Kushida on night 10, and I'm like, oh, like he tapped out Kushida with the Doki Choki. So it's like, not only did he get the 8 points, he got the bonus 2 points. So he's at 10. Like, he has vastly surpassed his point totals from years past. And I think he's really reached a new echelon of his standings within the junior division at this point in time, because, you know, we're talking about one more night of block action and he's alive. That has never happened. This is incredible.
Yeah, this has been the year of Doki. He's beat Hiromu twice this year. There's definitely an escalation here, and you know he's challenged for the junior championship this year, and yeah, he's been awesome here. And the Kushida match, you know, 12 minutes are a lot of fun, getting that submission victory over, you know, a submission expert in Kushida, and yeah, he sits here at 10 points. Where we'll talk about the final B block night, but yeah, if he could win, he has a chance of getting into the semifinals, and he'll get the 12. He'll be 12-point Doki like you want, and he could get into a spot in the semifinals.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm torn, because on the one hand, would I love for Doki to be a guy that goes through? Yes. But I have to be consistent, and I'm going to apply some of the same logic I applied to TJP. And do I think Doki could realistically headline Dominion? No, I don't. So do I want that heartbreak getting him through? And no, I mean, anybody with 2 brain cells is going to know that, you know, it doesn't really matter who he faces. It could be someone from his block. It could be like Well, Doki and Desperado sounds kind of cool. That's a match I always love to see. So maybe I would be in favor of it, but I would only be in favor for it for the quality of the match, because to me, Doki is one of the best juniors alive today. I just think he's so exciting and technically sound, but I also don't see him as being a big enough name to viably go through. The only thing I would say that is a little different from him and TJP is, like, with TJP, he's got the whole entirety of a narrative of the history of a faction resting on his shoulders. Doki doesn't have any of that pressure. He's already surpassed what we expected from him. So it's sort of like a Cinderella story at this point. So if he, you know, gets to the semifinals and then loses, that is quite the elevation for him. And that would be a huge building block for him in the future, in terms of like his standing in the promotion. So maybe I've talked myself a little bit you see him go through, but yeah, I mean, Doki's had a great tournament. I think outside, we'll talk about the next guy, but I think outside of the guy that we're about to talk about, I think Doki's like the number 2 guy in this block in terms of just performance.
Yeah, and another difference before we move on with him and TJP, I feel like with Doki, there has been this slow elevation of his standing in the junior division.
You mean year over year?
Yeah, but even especially like this past year, like the end of the year, 23 going into 24, like he's been getting big wins. Like he beat Hiromu earlier in the year. Like he's been kind of slowly picking up these big wins, and he's been slowly elevated up the card where it's like, oh, you can go back and be like, oh yeah, he has beaten all these people prior to the tournament, and now he's in the tournament, he's winning. It makes sense. Whereas TJP has been losing, and it's like, oh, now all of a sudden he's winning. It's like, what?
That's a good point, Jeremy.
So last guy here that's alive is our good friend Robbie Eagles, 5-3. Night 8, he defeated Dragon Dia. Night 9, losing to Hiromu, and then night 10, he gets his 2 points via forfeit from the injured Francesco Akira.
It's not just because Robbie and that I'm a fan of his, or that, we have friendly relations with him. He's been on this show before. I always have to put that stuff aside when it comes to like just the analytics of discussing this stuff. And I think Robbie's the top guy in this block when it just comes to performance night after night. I don't know if he's going to go through. I don't know if I doubt he's going to headline Dominion, because I still just think they're doing chalk. I think they're doing Hiromu and Despy again, but fuck if he hasn't been good in this tournament. And that's the story every year, but like at least this year he's alive. Unfortunately, in kayfabe, there've been some losses that you don't want to necessarily take from his standpoint. Like the Hiromu loss, that's a big loss. That's a huge tiebreaker loss that could have ramifications down the line, depending on how this final night shakes out. But the match was fucking phenomenal. And, at the tail end of like last week, Robbie was sitting at the top of the block. So, I mean, he's really had a standout tournament, and we hadn't seen him in quite a while leading into this tournament. So it's sort of like the regeneration of Robbie Eagles. The other thing that we kind of have to touch base on, it hasn't become full-fledged, but Robbie has started to integrate the PWA heel persona that he has going currently. He didn't start off the tournament that way, but I would say probably around the match with Dragon Dia and definitely leading into the Hiromu match, like we're seeing the shades and elements of what turned him into, and I'm not a PWA expert. I couldn't claim to say I know everything about the story there and that I'm following it, but they did a good enough job like encapsulating it during the match that he had with what was it, the Tuckman?
Yeah.
So I mean, they kind of gave us an idea of what we're looking at anyways, and that attitude is starting to come through now. And it's an interesting story adjustment, because it's like, I wouldn't classify TMDK as a heel unit or a face unit. They're kind of tweeners, but they're face leaning tweeners. And this new attitude is definitely much more heelish than the rest of the group. And I'm wondering how they rectify that, or, kind of reconcile it. But I've just noticed that over the past few nights.
Yeah, that attitude and edge really cranked up, like you mentioned, starting this week with the Dragon Dia match, and then going into the Hiromu match. We saw how vicious he was, and then he had that temper tantrum after losing and was very angry, and then he was on commentary on night 10. He had a undercard match where he killed a young lion in a tag match, and then he was on commentary for the rest of the night and was just, he was still kind of a little bit playful Robbie, but he was definitely a little bit more, there was more of that kind of, like you mentioned, that PWA kind of heelish edge to him, even in the commentary. So yeah, I'm wondering, where we're going there. Like, is this going to be a short-lived thing of him leaving TMDK? Is that going to kind of cause a rift between him and Fujita in the tag team going forward? We'll see what happens. But yeah, Robbie's been excellent, and I feel like every year he always has that one match that ends up being the one where he really turns it up, and we're all talking about it. You know, obviously the one year that was the El Fantasmo match, and now this year this Hiromu match, and yeah, he's looked great. And again, you know, it's a situation where I would love for him to be in the finals, get to Dominion, but I think one thing that hurts him is the fact that, like you mentioned, he's not always there, and so it's hard to build him as a draw because he's not always there. But like people are saying, if the tickets are already sold, I mean, I guess maybe you could give him a shot and try to, you know, build him as, you know, a foreign star of that division. But just like looking at the tea leaves and looking who's in play, it just seems like they're just going to do Hiromu Desperado just to be safe and give that match its, you know, big platform.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that, but I've been over the moon impressed with his showing in this year's tournament for sure.
Yeah. So now everybody else that we're going to talk about is mathematically eliminated. And first up here is the IWGP Junior Champion, Sho, who sits at 5-4 with 10 points. So night 8, he defeated Doki, like we mentioned. Night 9, he defeated Dragon Dia. And then on night 10, he lost to Taiji Ishimori. And then on the last B block night, he would have Francesco Akira, but Akira's out, so he's done. So he got his 2 points from that. He's at 10. There's no possible way for him to get any more points. So that's why at 10, he is done.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's weird. I don't want to go on a long tirade complaining about Sho. We've done that for several weeks now, complaining about his role as the champion or whatever. I've listened to some other voices in the space, and I understand, you know, one of the defenses about it is the fact that although he's champion and everything, he's middling most of the tournament. He's not in the main events. This is something that you and I both noticed and took note of and pointed out that very rarely is he in the main event of many of these nights. And, you know, I don't think either of us have been big proponents of the idea of having the House of Torture gimmick and show represent the IWGP Junior title. So it is what it is. In terms of this week's matches, I think that while, like, yeah, I didn't love the work. It was fine. I mean, the Dragon Dia match was very short-lived, and Dragon Dia went out there and did the shit that Dragon Dia does, which is very exciting and very fun, and Sho got him out there, got him out of there. And then the Doki and the Taiji Ishimori matches, for different reasons, were both entertaining in spite of what Sho and House of Torture were bringing to the table. And I felt like they found a way within the context of the story of the match to kind of overcome the malaise that we've all come to experience when it comes to a show match. So, and now he's not a factor
Yeah.
in the rest of the tournament, which is probably somewhat an indictment on his run as a champion, because I can't recall the last time an IWGP Junior titleist wasn't, you know, at least alive or in play going into the final night. But he still has a respectable 10 points. So, you know, kudos to Geto on that booking. One thing I do want to point out, though, there was a lot of theorists that believed that because on the final night he had Francesco Akira. A lot of people were looking at that thinking that Francesco Akira was going to knock him out on the final night and prevent him from winning. I tend to believe that was going to be the case, and they probably had to audible because now that he's getting the automatic 2 points against Francesco Akira, he had to lose somewhere. That's probably where the Taiji Ishimori win came from. They probably had to audible there. And maybe I'm incorrect, but it just seems like that's probably the case. Because of the fact that he can't lose on the final night, they needed Ishimori to kind of upset him here and get him out of there. So from that aspect, had everything gone to plan, he probably would still be alive right now, but unfortunately just didn't, with Francesco Akira's injury, it just couldn't happen.
Yeah, because if Ishimori would have lost, that would have put him at 10, and then in that main event with Hiromu, he would have still had a chance to advance to beat Hiromu and be at 12 and then have a tiebreaker over Hiromu. So Ishimori would have been alive either way. And so, yeah, that would have made sense to have Akira be the one to knock him out, and then you can give Akira a title match sometime after that. But yeah.
And I mean, and depending on how you view this, I mean, it is kind of interesting that you only have these 4 guys alive. There hypothetically could have been a scenario where Francesco Akira might have also been alive going into the final night and potentially been a semifinalist.
Right, yeah, we don't know how things would have shaken out had Akira still been in the tournament. There would probably some guys here, who knows, maybe like a Doki, maybe he wouldn't have been at 10 had that happen.
Oh yeah, there's a good chance Doki doesn't get to this point at all. and he's sitting at 8 points, and they're like, well, he did better than his last few years.
So next guy here, Kushida, he's 4-4 with 8 points. Night 8, losing to Drilla Maloney. Night 9, losing to Ninja Mac. And then night 10, losing to Doki. So very similar situation to Blake Christian, where Kushida was a house on fire at the beginning of the tournament. And now he's lost 3 in a row here and is mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the perception of these guys can change week to week just within the context of the tournament, because you look at those first few nights, and I don't want to say Kushida's sandbagging in the second half, but like he seemed to work a lot harder on those nights where he was winning. There's an extra pep in his step. Some of those matches. Not to say that these matches are bad by any means, but he's been on the downside. He's been on a losing streak. Given the momentum and trajectory that he had in kayfabe in the early part of the tournament, some of these matches like Doki or Ninja Mac would have seemed winnable for him. And unfortunately, like, I don't know. It's almost like he, did you ever see that movie, The Neverending Story?
Yeah.
Remember when they're walking through the swamps of sadness and they're like, if the sadness starts to overtake you, and the little boy's horse dies. It's like Kushida started to let the fear and the sadness, take over. And he's starting to sink in the swamp, and that's what's happened here. So yeah, he lost to Drilla, he lost to Ninja Mac, now he's lost to Kushida, and his story is over. The good thing is he's got a partner that beat Clark Connor, so maybe, we'll see, but he did beat the champion.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll ever be able to collect on that at this point in time, but in the early weeks, it felt like with Kushida beating Sho and with Kushida having all those wins, we're like, damn, they've been sleeping on this guy for so many years. But on the second half, they adjusted their booking and they got him, 4 straight losses to where it's like, I don't know. I think that they're still probably pretty happy to just kind of let the Kushida thing just, be done.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. But yeah, he was fine here this past week. Like I mentioned, this 8, a lot of loss. Start with that Drilla Killa on night 8, and then it's a downfall from him from there. But if you think about it, he replaced Joe, and I could see this kind of being where Yo could end up at like that 8 points and could win his last. At the 10, that 8 to 10 point range is where Yo probably would have been as well. But obviously a lot better kayfabe output here for Kushida compared to last year. So we'll see how this has him going forward. Maybe he'll get a title match later in the year, and maybe he'll be in the mix with the Jet Setters to challenge the War Dogs. So then following that, speaking of War Dogs, Drilla Maloney also 4-4 with 8 points. Like we mentioned, night 8 defeating Kushida. Night 9 losing to Taiji Ishimori. And then night 10 losing to Hiromu.
So yeah, Drilla was a guy that was doing very well, was alive, and had some very big matches on the last 2 nights against the point leaders in the block. He lost to both those guys and is unfortunately, eliminated. But I feel like he has really, again, we're a year out from him first stepping onto the scene in New Japan, and the progress that he's made, not just in his look or his work, but the way, the reception from the fans, the way that everybody kind of views him, the perception there, like it's very, very good. And I feel like he's even gone a step further and kind of solidified himself in the course of this tournament. And, the match with Ishimori, 6 minutes, 16 seconds, it wasn't, quite really too much of anything. And again, it really played into the bicep injury that you mentioned, but the Hiromu match really was a step up and kind of a test. And I felt like he passed. And I personally wouldn't be surprised, given the successes that we saw from Clark Connors and Drilla in the course of this tournament, to see those guys come off the titles in the very near future, so that we can start to set them up as like bona fide singles competitors within the junior division going forward.
Yeah, and that would be great. And like we mentioned, they did such a great job of really establishing the Drilla Killer pile driver. I feel like you really could push Drilla as a singles guy, and him being junior champion with that deadly finisher, and just running the division with that finisher. And I can definitely, see those guys being pushed more into singles role and challenging later on in the year. And they've set up some challengers for them: Jet Setters, Eagles, and Fujita. So I think there's a lot of teams for them to face if they want to keep the belts for a little bit while, or they can do the normal kind of hot potato thing. But I think that him and Connors have looked really strong, and I've really enjoyed his work this year. And he was a guy that debuted last year, and we weren't fully sure about him. He was still kind of finding his footing, and then he got to that Clark Connors match and started really putting it together, and then turns on Empire, joins the War Dogs, and like now he's totally comfortable. He's in his element. He's established his character, and he's killing it right now.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
So the last few guys here, we have Ninja Mac, who's also 4-4 with 8 points. He lost to Ishimori, and then night 9 defeated Kushida, and night 10 defeating Dragon Daya.
Ninja Mac, you knew he wasn't going to get a lot of points in this tournament, and thus he is eliminated. But I feel like, and some of this is going to be echoed in my sentiments about Dragon Daya as well, I feel like both guys have been the high flyers, the excitement, the just something you can really get hyped over when it comes to enjoyment of something that's been desperately missing from the Super Juniors tournament. While the tournament's been good, we've had a lot of really good wrestling, there hasn't been that mix of styles that you like to see, and there hasn't been that huge element of high flying. Well, all these guys high fly, very few of them can do the sorts of things that Dragon Daya and Ninja Mac have been able to do. And I mean, these guys are flipping, they're flying all over the place, they're doing the dives to the outside. This is what you want to see when you watch Best of the Super Juniors. And Ninja Mac is just excitement personified. The other thing though, too, he's been able to kind of differentiate himself a little bit by showcasing that he isn't a one-trick pony and that he is technically sound and that he does have a mat-based ground game and you know that he can chain and everything like that. And so that's been kind of refreshing. You know, and that he was able to pick up the win over Kushida using you know, his roll-up abilities. So, and that's not the first time he's done that in this tournament.
Yeah, he has a amateur wrestling background, and then also, you know, with the flipping with the Cirque du Soleil background. So there's a lot of different skill sets that he has. I think people just know it's a flipper, but yeah, he was able to utilize that amateur wrestling, grappling background there with Kushida. And then, yeah, he has been one of the highlights as far as excitement. You know, I can definitely see for years to come his flips and highlight reels in a Super Junior, you know, overall highlights. And you know, unfortunately, they just didn't really give him a ton of time. No main events. He didn't really get a chance to have like a quote unquote, you know, match of the year contender. But as far as somebody who maximized their minutes and was outstanding, it was Ninja Mac and the Ninja Special and the way he connected with the crowd. I feel like had they trusted him a little bit more, because I feel like he was a lot of kind of the opening parts of the cards, kind of getting, you know, 5-6 minutes. Had they given him a little bit more, I think he could have, you know, established himself even further. But in the minutes he had, I thought he killed it and looked really great. Especially, you know, the Dragon Dia match was, you know, the really fun matchup there this past week. And so
I really enjoyed the Kushida match on that Night 9 opener. That was incredible. Some of the stuff they did on the outside and the cartwheels, some really, really cool inventive spots that I just really enjoyed. I don't think that at this point, Ninja Mac's not like the shoe-in guy where you're like year after year, Super Juniors after Super Juniors, he's going to make a return. I don't think that that's where he's at right now. I'm not saying he couldn't ever come back. He'd probably be welcome if they needed a spot, but right now it doesn't feel like he's been integrated into the fabric of the promotion the way some other guys have in the past. You know, his appearance is probably closer to like when some of like the Impact juniors came over and they make an appearance and they're, you know, welcomed and everyone loves that they're here, but next year it'll be somebody else. At the same time, this is a great feather in his cap when it comes to his resume and everything like that. And I would enjoy seeing him again, even if it doesn't happen. We'll see.
Yeah. Then Francesco Akira, like we mentioned, he got injured, knee injury. They did say that he does not need surgery, so he should be making a faster recovery. No surgery needed. Probably will still be out for a couple months, but should be able to make 100% recovery. But he ends the tournament 2-3 with only 4 points, and then obviously forfeiting the remainder of his matchup. So tough break there for Akira.
One thing I do want to bring up, I know we talked and reviewed about the match that he had with Drill Maloney leading to the exodus or his exit from the tournament last week. We weren't sure if in fact he was going to be forfeiting the remainder of the tournament, but now that has happened, it kind of changes my perceptions of that match just a little bit, considering obviously those guys have a lot of history with one another between the War Dogs United Empire ongoing feud that was through last year and this year, plus their battles over the junior tag team titles. But there was kind of that narrative where like Francesco Akira, he was dealing with the leg injury all throughout the tournament. And finally it kind of came to a breaking point during that match. And he knew that he was like SOL, but he was still going to try and battle on. And Maloney knew this, and Maloney just, instead of like finishing him off, I mean, the match wasn't long, it was quick, but it could have been a lot quicker, but he kind of took his time and reveled in attacking that leg and really inflicting pain and everything like that. I think there's an opportunity down the line for them to revisit that whole thing, because one could say in kayfabe that Drill Maloney was the guy that probably put him on the shelf, or if it was something that was compounding, he went out of his way to really make sure that he was finished in this tournament.
Yeah, and that plays into their whole story with Akira being traumatized from getting stabbed by the fork by Drilla. So I think this whole adds a whole other wrinkle to their rivalry, and it's unfortunate also that he got injured, but it does heat things up with their rivalry. And now there's even more history behind them. Like this guy, jabbed him with a fork, and now he injured his knee, took him out the tournament. They can do a pretty big, feud with these guys and have them have a comeback match for Akira to try to finally get one up on Drilla.
Yeah, I think that is something worth looking out for in the in the future when he comes back. And another in a long string of like leg injuries lately between like Eddie Kingston and now Edge or Adam Cope, Big Cope, as they like to say over on Nation Radio. I feel like there's some others too.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bunch of people have either like broken feet, ankles, torn something, knees this year. It's been a lot of leg related injuries this year. But the last guy from Dragon Gate, Dragon Dia, he's 0-8, 0 points. Night 8 losing to Robbie Eagles. Night 9 losing to Show. Night 10 losing to Ninja Mac. And we did have a question here from Reddit user K Satchi. Any thoughts on Dia going 0-7 now, 0-8 now? Actually, for context, he was one of DG's bigger stars of the last couple of years, and is likely going to be the mascot of the company in the same way Kid was before him. Many of the DG fan base are generally a little dissatisfied and are beginning to question whether exposure is worth losing all these matches, especially for someone of Dia's caliber who can be generally considered an upper mid-carder. The main thing people think DG might get out of it is a NJPW appearance at Kobe World or a DGG1 appearance. Do you have any names in either company who would work in those positions?
Yeah, I don't doubt that is the case. We've talked over the past few weeks about how we're not intimately familiar with Dragon Dia and his standing in the company. I knew a little bit about the story with him losing his mask in the Shun Skywalker saga. I'd heard a little bit about that, so I did assume that he probably had somewhat of a prominent position, but just exactly what that was, we didn't know. But over the past few weeks, I feel like the talk and the scuttlebutt about him losing all these matches has kind of invigorated some of the Dragon Gate fan base to be a little more vocal about this. And so I've heard a bit more about it. And, it is unfortunate. Let's copy and paste some of my same talking points about the nature of these round robin tournaments and the nature of the point totals and everything like that. But again, echoing the same sentiments we've had week after week when it comes to his booking in the tournament, he took Taguchi's spot. This is probably very, very close to, if not near, where Taguchi was going to be. I don't know if Dragon Gate was privy to this before they agreed to it one way or the other, or if Dragon Dia was, but you would feel like, and I don't want to say like there's no blame on New Japan here, because there is some, but the host, not the host, the lending company, that office, Dragon Gate, they're the ones who have signed off on this. They're the ones who agreed to it. That doesn't make it good for them, but it's similar to what we've said in the past about Noah and the booking of Keito Kiyomiya in last year's G1, where we're like, why would the office sign off on this? And one thing I will say though, past couple years, there has been some work between New Japan and Noah, right? They've done joint shows, they've had some crossover stuff, but it's been tenuous at best. And then this past year, there's been granted, they have formed this new UJPW alliance, and there is the Abima kind of ownership stake working relationship there that we've talked about on this show before. with like Justin Nipper and stuff. But ever since last year, when Kiyomiya came and did those jobs in the G1, their relationship has really improved, and the amount of crossover, especially of New Japan going and helping bolster Noah, there's been a lot of that. Now, I'm not saying that that is going to happen between Dragon Gate and New Japan, but I do wonder, because there are often times where we questioned the booking of the Kiyomiya usage in that tournament, or his feud with Okada. We're like, man, this company's getting hoed and blah, blah, blah. And then turn around a year later, and there's a lot of shit that's going on in Noah that's New Japan adjacent or directly involved, and it's benefiting their business. And I wonder if it wouldn't just be a one-time, Dragon Gate guy comes and does a G1, or one time Hiromu goes over and works Yamato or whatever. Maybe this could potentially be the first in a good faith showing between the two companies that really fosters that relationship and expands it. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make excuses and say that this is warranted or a good thing, because Dragon Dia is undoubtedly a fantastic talent and has proven that throughout the tournament. He's another guy, like Jeremy said, with Ninja Mac. He's maximized the minutes that they've given him. And I'm hoping on the final night he gets some points, because it'll be good for him to finally get a win. But yeah, if I was a Dragon Gate fan, I'd probably be pissed.
Yeah, I think the hard thing, like you mentioned, he took Taguchi's booking. Last year, Taguchi got 2 points in the tournament. So Dia could win the last night and get 2 points. And then, I got to think that Dragon Gate knew that going into it. It was a last-minute replacement. And so, like you mentioned, some of the blame does go on Dragon Gate here. But, yeah, maybe this does open the door for a further, closer working relationship. Like this, Kei Sachi asked, like maybe this is leading to a big, Dragon Gate appearance at the Kobe World Show for New Japan, or a Dragon Gate guy in the G1. Is Shun Skywalker, he's a junior, or is he a heavyweight now?
It's Dragon Gate.
Yeah.
They don't really have heavyweights.
Yeah. Because I feel like
Skywalker is like, he's probably borderline, but I think you could probably get him in the G1, but I don't know, man. I don't know who they have that would fit the bill as like a true blue heavyweight, because I don't follow that company, honestly.
Yeah, same. I just know he's like one of the bigger stars from that promotion, and I mean, the last time we saw him, he looked pretty jacked, and I feel like potentially he could kind of cross that line into heavyweight and be the representation there. So maybe they do that, especially if we're going to do 4 blocks again. And then also, there's a big history with Shingo in Dragon Gate and Kobe World. So you could always bring, one of Shingo's old rivals to face him at, the New Japan show. So I think there's definitely opportunities there. And it's unfortunate that it had to come from Dragon Dia going 0-8. But like we've been saying, he looked great in the tournament. Asai moonsault every night, fast pace, flipping, high flying, a lot of fun to watch. In this tournament, he's a guy that, kept you entertained. So it was good seeing him. Hopefully, I would welcome him back next year, and I would love to see him, integrated more in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
And before we go into the A block and B block final nights, we had a question here from Les Commission 7252. What wrestlers should have been elevated in the tournament, or was everyone in the tournament booked the way they should have been booked?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like we've somewhat discussed this through the course of this discussion. There's always guys that could be booked higher, and always guys that could be booked lower, but a vast majority of the tournament's been very parity based,
Yeah, I would say overall, I feel like everybody should have been, it was booked the way they should have been booked. I would have maybe gone like Vegeta a little bit higher, maybe Ninja Mac a little bit higher, but I think overall, for the most part, everybody was kind of where they should have been. He also asked, did last Sunday's show feel like a true Best of Super Junior show compared to the rest of the shows since the start of the tournament.
What was last Sunday? What I always get confused when people say like next Sunday or last Sunday or this Sunday. Like I'm like, which day are we talking about?
Sunday, I think maybe this past Sunday, which would have been what, night 9? The Hiromu Eagles match, I think.
Oh, night nine was a fantastic night. And I mentioned earlier on the show, I feel like that might be up there, if not the best night of the tournament.
Yeah. All right. So the conclusion of the tournament, we have 3 nights left. So May 30th is going to be, that's Thursday. That's the last A block night. May 31st is the last B block night. And then Monday, June 3rd is going to be the semifinals. All 3 of these shows happening in Korakuen Hall. So on the 30th, we'll have Kushida and Choma Kato versus Dragon Dia and Ninja Mac. Eagles and Sabre versus Doki and Taka. Drilla, Gato, and Taiji versus Hiromu, Shingo, and Naito. And then Akira and a returning Hanare. Well, Akira's out. I don't know who's going to replace him yet, but it'll be somebody and Hanare versus Sho and Nudro. And then that will lead us to the final A block matches. So first up, it will be Yoshinobu Kanemaru versus Clark Connors. So if Clark Connors wins, he remains in contention with a win, and he needs certain people to lose in order for him to advance. So I'm thinking that this is a Kanemaru upset special here.
I feel like you could do that, but what's the situation he needs to happen for him to go through? Is it pretty convoluted?
So for Connors to go through, he needs Kevin Knight to lose. He needs Hayata to lose. He needs Blake Christian to lose. He needs Teton to lose. And he needs pretty much everybody. He needs everybody to lose pretty much for him to advance, which is hard because you have Hayata and Despy in the main event. So the winner there is getting 12. So essentially, he needs Vegeta to beat Blake Christian. He needs Teton. He needs TJP to beat Teton, and he needs Bushi to beat Kevin Knight.
So I mean, if for simplicity's sake, you could have Kanemaru win, and then just eliminate Clark and get him out of there. But from my viewpoint, it's like Clark wins, and he needs so many specific things to happen for him to get through that are unlikely to happen. It's probably fine for him to just win the match and up his point total.
Yeah. Either way, I think it doesn't really matter, but it would be good as a champion to have him end with 10 points. So yeah, you could do that too. Then following that,
I'm booking him to win that match personally.
Okay. Then following that, it'll be Bushi versus Kevin Knight. It's a very similar situation. Kevin Knight is at 8 points, so he has to win to remain in contention. But again, just like Clark Connors, he would essentially need everybody else. He'd probably need Clark to lose. He would need TJP to win. He would need Blake Christian to lose, and then he would need Desperado to probably win, actually, since he beat Desperado. Or maybe actually Desperado loss could probably help him too. But again, so many moving parts there that Kevin Knight would need to get in.
Yeah, and this one's tough because, like you mentioned, he would need Clark Connors to lose, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he has a tiebreaker over Clark, so if Clark got the 10, he would get the 10, he would have the tiebreaker over him, but it would probably still work out better for him if Clark just lost.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm just gonna say here, I think Bushi probably beats him.
Yeah, because Bushi's at like 6 points, and so you can have Bushi end at 8.
Bushi ends at 8. Kevin's already at 8. That puts him at parity. I think Clark, with being a champion, it just makes more sense for him to get that win. And then you just kind of eliminate Kevin, get him out of there, and you move on.
Then the 7th match of the night is going to be TJP versus Teton. So here's where things get really interesting. So if Teton wins, he advances and he'll get to 12. But if TJP wins, he remains alive at 10 points. And then he needs Blake Christian to lose. And he needs Desperado to lose as well. Well, I guess regardless of as long as Blake Christian wins, I think he would get in with a Desperado or Hayata win.
You should have gone through all the matches first instead of having us go match by match, because it gets more complicated after every single match we go to. I'm like, what the fuck?
All right, so last 2 matches then. Blake Christian faces Kosei Vegeta, and the main event is El Desperado versus Hayata.
Okay, gotcha. So based on your notes here, Desperado versus Hayata, whoever wins that match, they just advance, period.
Right, because they're 10 and 10, so the winner's going to get 12.
And then in the semi-main event, if Blake Christian wins, he advances, period. So I think we can say automatically Kosei Fujita is going to beat Blake Christian.
You're right.
Desperado is for sure going to beat Hayata.
Right.
So Desperado's getting through. Blake Christian's not getting through. And then essentially it becomes a 4-way run at that point. And we're just working backwards here between Clark Connors, Kevin Knight, Teton, and TJP. And if Teton had won his match against TJP, he's automatically through. But if TJP wins, he remains in contention. What exactly does TJP need to happen for him to go through? Because that's the likely question here, because it's the 3rd match from the top.
Yeah, so TJP, he needs Vegeta to beat Blake Christian, so Blake can stay at 10. And then TJ has a tiebreaker over him. And then TJ, also, if he beats Teton, he has a tiebreaker over Teton at 10. And then he would need Desperado. Well, I guess either way, because he beat Desperado. So if Desperado lost, he would have a tiebreaker over Desperado at 10. And I believe he defeated Hayata this past week, right? So he would have the.
So if he beats Teton and Desperado goes through, which we think he is, TJP's 1A in the block, isn't he?
I think he could get to that point, yeah. So I think he lost to Hayata. So I think he needs Despy to win.
Okay. Well, then that's what's going to happen. TJP is going to beat Teton. Blake Christian is going to lose to Kosei Fujita, and then Desperado is going to beat Hayata. That will put TJP at 12 points. That will put El Desperado at 12 points.
No, right? TJP winning puts him at 10.
Oh, and then Desperado goes to 12?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I was a little confused here. Okay, perfect. And then at the end of the day, Desperado will be 1A and TJP will be 2A. Right. So I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. And yeah, I think Clark wins his match, but there's just too many things that need to happen for him to go through. I think Bushi beats Kevin Knight to get him out of there. TJP, upsets Teton, gets him done. Blake Christian loses to Kosei, and then Desperado, wins Hayata to punch his ticket. So we're looking at Despy 1A, TJP 2A. That's what I see.
Yeah, I think that's the situation. I just want to double check one thing with TJP and Hayata, because I'm trying to remember if he beat Hayata or not, because that actually could end up bumping him out if he lost to Hayata. Let's see here. So
I count on you to remember these things, Jeremy.
Okay, yeah. So he did defeat Hayata, night 6. Okay, so yeah. So with Hayata losing the Despy, he would be at 10.
TJ and he has the tiebreaker over him.
Yeah. And so yeah, TJP actually has the tiebreaker over either of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically but then I guess, I don't know, there could be more complicated, Matt, that we're overlooking, but essentially if he wins his match and Blake Christian loses, he would win the tiebreaker over either guy, most likely.
Yeah, because Despy loses, Despy would be at 10, and he beat Despy, so he would have a tiebreaker over Despy, and then Hayata's at 10, and he loses, he stays at 10, he has a tiebreaker over him.
Unless there's some weird math that we're just not taking into consideration. But yeah, that's probably what it likely is. But either way, I think it's going to be TJP 2A, Despy 1A. And that's going to be the result of the night of May 30th. So that's 2 days from now.
Yeah. Then on the 31st is the final B block night. We don't have the full card yet as of this recording, just a tournament matches. So the opener would have been Sho and Francesco Akira, but Akira is obviously he's hurt, so that match is not happening. Then we'll have Kushida and Dragon Dia, and they're both out. We'll have Drilla Maloney and Ninja Mac, they're both out. And then the last two matches will determine what happens here. So we'll have Robbie Eagles versus Doki, and if Doki wins, he remains in contention there. And I think if Robbie's at 10. So yeah, if Robbie wins, he could remain in contention as well. So the winner there will get to 12. But I think that you know what the thing is with Robbie is Robbie lost to Ishimori and Hiromu. So the main event is Taiji Ishimori versus Hiromu Takahashi. So Robbie lost to both those guys. So even if Robbie does get the 12, he can't get a tiebreaker over either of those guys.
So is he just out and we messed it up earlier?
Yeah, I thought he still had a shot of getting in, but he does not.
Oh shit, that sucks.
Yeah, I thought with being at 10 he was still alive with one match left, but yeah, because if he gets a 12, the winner of Ishimori Hiromu is going to get to 14, and then he lost to both those guys, so he would lose a tiebreaker, so he can't advance. So only Doki could advance from that match.
Okay, and did you mention the other matches in the block from earlier?
So yeah, so Kushida, Dragon Dia, Drilla, and Ninja Mac, and those. Okay.
Those are just they're playing for Pride,
right?
Okay, interesting. So if Ishimori versus Hiromu, the winner advances automatically, and then the loser maybe has a chance to be B2 depending on the outcome of Robbie Eagles versus Doki. And we forgot to mention, but Sho is also automatically getting 2 points because Francesco Akira is out. So, but he's already mathematically eliminated. So the real question here is, I guess what I'm kind of confused about is if Doki wins, how is he only in contention?
So if Doki wins, that would put him at 12. But let's see. He beat Hiromu, so he does have a hot tiebreaker over Hiromu, but I think he lost to Ishimori.
Lost to Ishimori.
Yeah, he lost to Ishimori.
Okay, gotcha. So you could go the simple route and you could just have Robbie Eagles beat Doki, just get him out of contention, period. Doki's already at 10 points. Robbie goes up to 12. He's mathematically eliminated. And then at that point, Ishimori and Hiromu are fighting for 1A or 1B and 2B, right. Period. Or you could keep it spicy and keep Doki in. And if Doki beats Eagles, he goes to 12. And then it becomes a situation where if Hiromu wins, they're both at actually
no. So Doki needs Hiromu to lose. So then they would both be at 12. He has a tiebreaker over Hiromu, and he would be B2.
So Ishimori wins, and Ishimori goes up to 14 points. He would be B1. Doki would be B2. Or Hiromu wins and then Doki gets eliminated, and it's Hiromu B1, Ishimori B2.
Right.
And that's a tough one to call because in 2 out of the 3 situations, you wind up with the same essential scenario where Hiromu and Ishimori are both going through, maybe in different spots, but both going through. The only situation where Doki has a shot to go through is if he wins his match and Hiromu loses, which I think most people don't anticipate. I mean, almost everybody expects Hiromu to go through, so that's probably just not happening here whatsoever. The real question is, I guess, do you think they keep Doki alive going into that final match to add a little intrigue?
I mean, I would at this point, just to make it even more spicy and to give it a shot, give Ishimori a shot of potentially winning that main event.
That, yes. And at the same time, though, okay. So we think that let's backtrack here a little bit. 1A for sure is going to be Desperado.
Right.
I highly doubt they're doing Hiromu as B2. So what scenarios would wind up with Hiromu going through as B2?
I don't think there is. I guess maybe a time limit draw with him and Ishimori would be the only way that he gets a B2. Because
if Doki were to,
well, I guess if Doki loses, then he can get through as B2.
And they're not going to do that.
Right.
For sure, they're going to do that.
Right.
So then it probably does make sense to have Doki win. That adds the intrigue, and then you have Hiromu win, and then him and Ishimori go through.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, that makes more sense. And then at the end of the day, it will be Hiromu versus TJP and Taiji Ishimori versus Desperado.
Yeah, that's what I think that's what our semifinals are going to be.
And then on June 3rd, those will be those matches that will play out on night 13 of Best of Super Juniors. And then, by the time we're recording next week, we'll have already reviewed all that. We'll know it all, and we will be on our way to Dominion to view the finals of the Super Juniors in the main event.
Yeah, and I'll see with Hiromu and Despy being in the opposite ends of what we're predicting here. I feel like it's very clear that Hiromu's going to beat TJP, Despy will beat Taiji Ishimori, and then we'll get a Despy Hiromu finals.
I feel pretty confident of that. I'd be shocked if they did anything else.
Same. Well, that's going to be our Super Junior coverage for this week. Like I said, next week we'll come back. We'll record Monday, June 3rd, same day as the semifinals. So as we record next week, we'll know the results of the semifinal matchups and who's going to the Dominion main event, which I think we all know is going to be Hiromu and Despy at this point. So one other thing before we jump into other news items, this past Sunday at AEW Double or Nothing, Jon Moxley, the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, he defeated Konosuke Takeshita in a eliminator match. And a question here from that dude named Menace: thoughts on the Mox versus Takeshita match at Double or Nothing? Who do you think will be challenging for the heavyweight title next?
Evil.
Yeah, so Evil is booked.
Is Evil.
Yeah, it's Mox and Evil, June 9th. I don't know what will be next after that, but the Mox Takeshita match was a little disappointing. So they did an angle on Collision the night before where Takeshita Pillmanized Jon Moxley's arm. So Moxley comes into the match, arms all taped up, bandaged up. He's a one-armed man, and the whole match, Takeshita's just working the arm, and pretty much it was like 90-10. Like he's just owning Jon Moxley and just working the arm the whole match. And then towards the end, Moxley comes back and fires up, and there was a mishap with a chair where Don told Takeshita to use a chair. It backfired. He did the curb stomp to Takeshita on the chair, which left the opening for him to do the Death Rider. 1, 2, 3. He beats Konosuke in the eliminator match. So no title match for Konosuke, but it kind of made him look dumb losing to a one-armed man. I know a ton of politics with a DDT guy facing the IWGP champion and beating him when there's already an announced title match for Dominion, but I would have just rathered either they just had a regular match and just had an awesome match without Moxley selling the arm the whole time, or they would have just made it a title match and just had Moxley win since Konosuke was going to lose anyway.
I mean, I assume that Tony Khan probably wanted it to be for the title, and Gato and the brain trust over there at the IWGP committee were like, that's not going to work for me, brother.
It's like, well, we'll let Powerhouse Hobbs get a shot, but Konosuke, no.
Yeah, that's definitely not happening. I heard that Jon Moxley was he did a tribute to the Yeti on that night.
What do you mean? I don't.
You don't know the Yeti?
I know the Yeti, but I don't remember the tribute that I didn't catch that.
Because he was all wrapped up in bandage. Yeah, so that didn't go over. But yeah, I didn't see the match. Honestly, I didn't really have too much interest in the match because even though I'm sure the match was okay, from what I heard, it didn't deliver to the heights it probably could have. It just it was a foregone conclusion. They're not going to have the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion lose a title eliminator match to a DDT guy, or pretty much to anybody at this point, really. It just wouldn't make sense. I understand that they did that to kind of add a little bit of intrigue and question, could he lose here? And, some fans, even people on this network that are a little bit more tied in with AEW, were like, he might lose so that they could do the return match. But if they wanted to do an IWGP title match, they would have just done it here.
Right. Yeah.
It's the reason they didn't do it, because they don't plan to do it. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the booking that they did prior with the arm angle or whatever. But it is what it is. I don't know. I didn't watch the pay-per-view, so I can't speak too much more on any of it. But let's jump into the news. So there was an announcement that there will be a Forbidden Door Casino Gauntlet this coming Wednesday, where the winner will face Swerve Strickland. The relevancy here is there might potentially be New Japan involvement. Given the fact it is Forbidden Door, you just never know who might show up in that gauntlet match. So
yeah, the only hard thing there, like we mentioned, there are shows the 30th, the 31st, that some of the top guys are on the undercards, like Shingo and Sabre. So I don't know who's going to be able to make it to that.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it as we get closer to the date, but this Forbidden Door is not feeling very Forbidden Door-y at all. Just in terms of projections of what I'm seeing. It feels like we're, in my opinion, we're probably not that far off from just getting like a dynasty type show with a couple New Japan guys involvement, some Stardom matches, and some CMLL. Like, there's probably a reason that they've got all those people involved, because it's probably not going to be a dream match card anymore at all, honestly. Hiroshi Tanahashi was the mystery partner for Daniel Garcia and Claudio Castagnoli this past Saturday at Collision. They defeated The Righteous and Lance Archer. There were names announced for Fantasticmania USA, which is upcoming. Amongst those names were Stephanie Vaquer, Yota Tsuji, Ultimo Guerrero, Zack Sabre Jr., Mystico, and Hechicero. Sonata, who has been absent from matches since April 27th, due to health concerns, has undergone evaluation, and he will be working toward return in the ring in the near future. New Japan announced. So yeah, that's upcoming very soon. Altogether in Sapporo on June 15th, there were announced matches. The main event will be Tetsuya Naito versus Jake Lee from Noah. All Rebellion, which is Alejandro Kano, Keito Kiyomiya, taking on Gabe Kidd, David Finlay, and Yohei 7th match, the LIG team of Titan Bushi, Hiromu, Yota Tsuji, and Shingo taking on Drill Maloney, Clark Connors, LJ Cleary, Anthony Green, and Jack Morris from Noah. 6th match, there will be the 3rd singles match in a series of matches between Tomohiro Ishii and Masa Kitamiya. 5th match of the night, Naomichi Marufuji and Hiroshi Tanahashi team up to take on the Just Five Guys team of Yuya Uemura and Sonata. 4th match of the night, Tetsuya Endo from DDT, Ryohei Oiwa, Shota Umino take on Kazusada Higuchi from DDT, Great Okan, and Jeff Cobb. 3rd match of the night, Bishamon will take on Daichi Hashimoto and Daisuke Sekimoto from BJW. 2nd match of the night, Azumi will take on Starlight Kid in singles action. And then the 1st match of the evening, TMDK's Kosei Fujita, Robbie Eagles, and ZSJ taking on Yua, Owada, Hayata, and Ulka Sasaki from Noah. So quite a few Noah and New Japan participants on this All Together show, almost exclusively, aside from a couple BJW, Stardom, and DDT guys. It's almost completely a Noah New Japan show. So I am wondering how long this United Japan Pro Wrestling is going to actually last.
Yeah.
Final bit of news here. Ishii, Don Fuji, and Yuji Hino are set to challenge Minoru Suzuki, Brother Hashi, and Kengo for the War 6-man tag team titles on July 6th at Tenru Project show. So that's probably going to be a cool one to check out.
Yeah.
And kick it over to the questions.
Yeah, a few questions here, and then we'll wrap the show up. Several questions here from Death Triangle 720. So, have you guys seen Kadani's latest thoughts on the yen and how expensive foreign talent are? Do you think it's time they limit the gaijins they have or will obtain?
Yeah, I did. This was sent to me by a friend of the show, and we kind of had a brief discussion in it. I appreciated some of the thoughts that Kadani had there, just kind of discussing with fans about the economics of business and the how trade works with monetary value between different countries, and it is becoming increasingly more expensive for New Japan to bring in outside talent, while it's becoming increasingly more profitable for them to do shows on the outside internationally. So
yeah, I saw those comments as well, and I get that foreign talent is getting more expensive. So as far as limiting, I say you don't need to bring in Nick Nemeth and Matt Riddle and Mustafa Ali and spend especially for those former WWE guys. They're gonna want a lot of money per date. I would not spend the money on those guys. I would bolster the current gaijins you have on the roster, your Bull Club War Dogs and your Robbie Eagles, guys like that. Use that big money, WWE money, to bolster your homegrown foreigners that you already have. His next question, what would your thoughts be if Oiwa came back to New Japan with his own faction? It would make him stand out and not relegate him to the boring format the company has when returning Young Lions.
Yeah, so that was something I sort of expect. You probably covered it on the news, I'm assuming. Stuff with yeah. So we didn't discuss it on this week's show, but I'm a little bit out of the loop. I understand that there was a heel alignment for Oiwa where he turned on Kaito Kiyomiya and attacked Kano, and people are wondering if we're not too far away from an Oiwa return and potentially aligning himself with one of the heel factions or forming a heel faction somewhere here in New Japan. And I think it's definitely an interesting thing to keep your eyes on. Although I'm personally not tuning into those Noah shows to follow the path.
I don't know if it was quite a heel turn. So the whole thing was like he was on an 8-man tag on the opposite side of Kano and Kiyomiya's All Rebellion team. He pins Cristobal. And then after the match, Kiyomiya offers him a spot in All Rebellion. He initially accepts, and then he pulls a swerve, attacks both of them, and he's like, I'm not under your thumb anymore, essentially. Like, I'm not calling you Kaito-san. Like, you're just Kaito Kiyomiya, and I'm out to, beat you. And then the heel group of good-looking guys came out. He didn't join them either. He just, like, brushed past them. So I don't know so much of it's a heel turn of more of, like, I just don't want to be, like, I'm still a New Japan guy, and I do not want to be, like, under the thumb of Kaito Kiyomiya.
Well, I'm all in favor for him coming back as a heel if that's what they decide to do, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool if he did come back, if he had his own faction. I don't know who he would put in it, but I do think he's a guy, like, he looks great. Like, he's put on a ton of muscle. The mullet looks great. His gear looks great. Like, again, he's another young guy that he has the looks. His in-ring's improved. I think he could be a guy that he could be a player if they push him.
He's got a good-looking haircut, a mullet. Maybe they should cut it off in the first few months of him working in the company.
Oh my gosh, dude! There needs to be a sign in the back, like returning people do not cut your hair. Freaking Umino and Uemura. It's like, man, what were they doing? His next question: since New Japan doesn't have a choice in the matter, which of the young gen should be the focus of Forbidden Door 3? I would have Shota, Tsuchi, War Dogs, and Vegeta be front and center for the pay-per-view.
I'm pretty sure New Japan does have a say. I don't know why they wouldn't have a say.
Yeah, I know people, they love, poking the fun of the relationship and the whole Tony Khan thing, but it's still a co-produced show, and I'm sure that Gato and Rocky and Tanahashi are going to have some inputs on what's happening.
I did see a comment from Tanahashi where he was in the press conference post-show with Tony Khan, and the question was broached about the idea of them doing a Forbidden Door type show in Japan, and Tanahashi wasn't quite following the question because it's in English, but Tony Khan did kind of bridge the gap a little bit and explain that they were asking about doing a similar type show in Japan, and it seemed based on their discussion that this is something they've talked about. And Tony Khan kind of alluded to the idea that if they did something like that, it wouldn't be Forbidden Door, because Forbidden Door is like an established brand in AEW in the States, but it sounded like there has been some level of discussion about doing something like this in Japan. So in terms of who's going to be a focus on the show, I really don't know. But I get the feeling, like I said earlier, with them bringing in CMLL guys in and them focusing on their own talent and their own titles and bringing in Stardom as well, this just screams to me that it's not going to be the Forbidden Door of old, and we might be expecting like one or two big New Japan's, AEW style matches. But I bet you the rest of it is just like either tag matches or maybe just stuff featuring CMLL and Stardom and not even so much New Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see that much New Japan talent come over, honestly.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the initial promotion of the event, all the commercials have been focused on AEW and New Japan. They haven't officially said that CMLL or Stardom is involved yet. So who knows? I think there's enough guys that you can, like I mentioned, there's New Japan roster is so talented that they have the guys. If you want to do an 8-match dream card, you could, but yeah, I just don't know if they feel like it's the right year to do that kind of thing. And yeah, there might be a ton of multi-mans. I could see a CMLL person winning that Casino Gauntlet to be the one to challenge Swerve. It also be Tanahashi since he's there, and Tanahashi beat Swerve last year at Collision, so you could have the rematch there and Tanahashi challenge for the AEW title, and the Western fan base still sees Tanahashi as a top star, so you could do that as well. But yeah, the New Japan, like it might be a lot of tag matches with New Japan talent. His next question, to make the G1 feel special again, should they have certain qualifier matches instead of having people who have been there repeatedly not be in the tournament? Love Tana and Ishii, but certain guys should be in the tournament, and it feels like we're stuck with a ton of repetitive matchups.
What's the question again? Sounded more like just a statement.
I think he's asking should there be qualifiers for G1. So if you don't want a Tanahashi or Ishii in, you make them qualify and they lose, kind of thing.
I've always been a huge proponent of the concept of either qualifier matches or qualifiers in general to get into the tournament, like something based around people's singles win-loss record or something of that nature. Maybe champions automatically get, I don't know, but I doubt it will happen. So it's a fine concept in theory, but it's probably not going to be executed.
Yeah, especially a year when, Jalal stars that you typically have are missing. It's going to be hard to say, oh, yeah, we're not going to put Tanahashi or Ishii in this thing. But I do think it would be kind of cool if like your record the previous year was a big factor in whether or not you got in. So like if you go like 3-6 the previous year, like you should either need a qualifier or you should just not be let in because you did so bad the previous year. Next question. Do you guys think New Japan got too comfortable having a ton of talent and not having any sort of change of character development? Ishimori, Bushi, Ishii, Goto, etc., who are the same characters they have been for years.
I don't know. Like, I don't know, Jeremy. What do you think?
I definitely don't think that they prepared well for the future. I do think, they were, eating well with Okada and Naito and Ospreay and Jay White and a healthy Tanahashi, like, Kenny Omega. Also, they had so many guys and they were loaded, and, even when a few guys left, like Kenny and everybody, like they were able to still reload, but they were not planning for Okada and Jay White and all those guys to be leaving. So yeah, I think at that point, that you could say maybe they were too comfortable with where they were at. But as far as character development, I mean, the guys he mentioned, like, are those characters you really want to see develop or change?
I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like it's so easy to like Monday morning quarterback all this shit. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like Gato gets praised, right, for the type of storytelling that he did for over a decade. But that same type of storytelling wasn't necessary. It didn't lend itself necessarily to the type of character progressions that people would like to see. And this is also discounting any sort of progression that we did see from people like Hanare, for example, or I don't know, any number of guys that like Tamatonga, just to kind of give a couple examples. I'm sure there's been many other. You can look at Okada. Okada's character progressed quite a bit over his tenure.
Jay White, I feel like.
Yeah, Jay White. There's a lot of examples of people that had character growth. And some of these guys too, I would say probably do have some elements of character growth, even if on the surface it's not as noticeable as others, but that's due to the style of company of wrestling that New Japan, presents itself as. And a lot of those story elements are kind of more highlighted in the backstage comments more so than anything else. At the same time, let's play devil's advocate and play the opposite. And what if everybody was shifting and doing face and heel turns and changing their characters? Now we're moving into a Western style of wrestling, presentation, and people would complain on that. And so it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is not, granted, it's not necessarily the type of wrestling to lend itself to everybody having overhauls of their character, all the time. But it's just one of those things you sort of honestly kind of have to accept, especially since they do character changes, just not with everybody on the whole roster all the time.
Yeah. His last question, do any of the factions currently feel special anyway? For me, I think New Japan was better off having 5 factions like 2017.
No, but that is due to one very important factor, the lack of stars and the defining characteristic, putting all of your, you could be a deep story driven fan and dive into the inner workings and the moral fiber of each group and their story arc and their motivations and blah, 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 blah. But really it comes down to one thing. Who's the fucking star of the group? That is the main catalyst of what makes or breaks a group. And the reality is, the only group that really has a real star is Naito and LIJ. LIJ is still special because they got Naito, who is also, by the way, breaking down and probably on his last couple legs, or no legs. What other group has a top guy?
I mean, TMDK has Saber, but they haven't really pushed him as, that special top star. I feel like the War Dogs were on the cusp of being special with the cage match and getting Ospreay out of there, but then they had Finlay lose to Nick Nemeth.
Yeah. But, for my argument's sake, at this current time, they've got figureheads, but they don't have stars. The only group that has a true blue star is LIJ. And that's why the perception is none of these groups feel special. A couple months ago, you had Ospreay. Yeah. A couple years ago, you had Jay White, you had
Okada,
and these groups felt special because they had stars on top. It's pretty simple, honestly.
Yeah. Next question here from K Sachi. Do you think NJPW/Gato takes too long to promote their young guys? It seems to be getting a little better. Oleg and Vegeta come to mind as successes, but I feel like a lot of guys seem to stick in young lion/rookie status for a long while. I wonder if the new guys who are struggling to get over, it feels like sometimes like Suchi is the only over new guy, would be doing better had they been in the mix a bit earlier when Japanese wrestling as a whole was a lot hotter.
Yeah, I would have to imagine it's not just necessarily a booking issue. It probably has a lot to do with the hierarchy status of wrestling. There's been a power vacuum that's been created with a lot of these stars that have jumped ship and gone westward. And then you've got your veterans, guys who have been waiting in line for quite a while, and they think they're come due. And, there's that senpai kosai relationship sort of thing that's inherent in, fight contact, martial arts, combat sports in Japan. And it's like, yeah, they do need to push these guys, but there's also the traditional sort of thing where it's like, you need to respect your elders and the guys that are above you and pay your dues. And, I think that is probably there's politics at play here, honestly, because there's a lot of people probably protecting their spots.
Definitely. And yeah, we've been saying on the show for a long time now that, a lot of these young guys should be getting pushed and utilized more. But yeah, there's still, even with a lot of the top stars leaving them, there's still a lot of politics. And then also with Japanese wrestling as a whole not being as hot as it once was, I'm sure all that comes into play as well. Next question from Reddit user, I am annoyed. This year has seen the ascension of two young sumo stars in Takeru Fuji and Onosato, as well as the escalation of other young Rikishi such as Koto Sakura and Kanoto Nakawa. What can NJPW learn from sumo's own youth movement?
I'm not a huge, I'm not very knowledgeable about sumo, but I do listen to some podcasts where they talk about this thing. And so my understanding is that a lot of the old regime, the old guard, the old Yokozunas have started to move on, and they've been looking for stars not unlike what New Japan is in the midst of. And they've started to, I wouldn't say push, but they've started to platform these younger up and coming Rikishis, so I do think that it is probably something that New Japan should look at, not to mention what some of their contemporary, the best example is Yuma Anzai in All Japan, and what's the the successes they're having with him on top right now. And New Japan can even just look back into their past and look at some of their boom periods built off of the back of men like Tanahashi and Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and, the Three Musketeers and everything like that. And now is probably the time to start going that way. If not, a couple years ago.
Yeah. Next question here from Ready to Solid Deuce. Thoughts on Oiwa's turn? Seems he's being set up to be recruited by Kid.
Could be. Could be something else. We've kind of already talked a little bit about it. I appreciate the question. I would almost like it if he wasn't a Bullet Club guy, but did something a little different and unique.
Yeah, I don't think, because, Kid is he's feuding with Kiyomiya, and so in one sense, yeah, maybe that could allure Oiwa, but Oiwa refused to join good-looking guys who's working with War Dogs, so I could see Oiwa also refusing Bullet Club and just wanting to be his own man. Last set of questions here from Razor Hawaiian Punch BV. First, he says, why is Naito the best, especially after he took a Hanma headbutt on a BOSJ undercard last night?
You watched the undercards?
I did not watch any undercards. His next question, after Yujiro passed on his Tokyo pimps to Sho, what other moves should he be giving away? Should Evil take Miami Shine?
What the fuck is Miami Shine?
That's that move where he gets them up in Fireman and he does the swinging thing and drops him down.
Bro, I've never known the name. I barely know any of his moves, like the name. I know there's a Big Juice, there's a Big Pimpin' or something. I don't know.
There's Pimp Juice, there's Big Juice, there's Miami Shine.
I can't believe, what is it called when he bites their thumb when they're putting him in a headlock? What is that called?
The Pimp's Bite.
I don't know. I don't care. I'm sorry.
His last question, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren are going to be holding a 5 versus 5 card in Saudi Arabia. How much would the Crown Prince need to throw around for Top Rank and PBC to have a similar card? How do you feel about Saudi Arabia putting these super fights / super cards together, especially knowing that the crowds aren't great and the morality of knowing that the regime ordered a man put through a wood chipper?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, bro. I don't know. I don't want to stand up here and be the beacon of morality when it comes to sports washing and all of the, entailing moral play that's sort of in the that stands there when it comes to Saudi Arabia and who should or shouldn't run shows there or accept the money. Because on the one hand, yeah, I definitely think it is wrong. At the same time, like, I tune in for those fights because no one else will make them. I shout out to Pollock and Thurston. They had a gentleman on recently who had a book. I think it was called Blood and Money, Oil and Money, something like that, where they sort of had an insider perspective on the ongoings with Saudi Arabia and their business dealings when it pertains to sport. And I thought that was a very informative listen. So if you haven't heard that, maybe go out of your way, check that out. It's probably aired the last couple of weeks, but yeah, I mean, at this point right now, like, Saudi Arabia is becoming like the fight capital of the world because they're willing to pay all this money way above and beyond what is reasonable to host these fights. All in the name of boosting, their tourism and their standing within the world when it comes to sport. And, they've kind of surpassed at this point in time, like Las Vegas, when it comes to being the fight capital, especially for boxing. And, it is wrong, but they're also putting together the fights that nobody else is willing to make. So I don't know what to tell you. It's not good, but it is the state of things. On the one hand, I don't know. I'm not like the most political person myself. Like there is a bit of a capitalistic, streak in me to where I'm like, well, it's a free market and they're paying the most, and these guys are trying to find work, and that is what it is. But at the same time, like, they did kill Jamal Khashoggi, and that was a very, very, very terrible thing, and something that people shouldn't just turn a blind eye to. But I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't pay for those fights anyways. I steal them, so
yeah, I'm not gonna tell.
They're not getting my money.
I'm not gonna tell somebody whether or not to watch it or not watch it, or pay for it, not pay for it. But I do feel like the whole sports watching thing has worked, because I feel like when WWE was first going over there and all these other promotions, UFC are first going, I feel like there's a lot of kind of fan backlash and like, we don't want to watch that, we don't want to support that. And I feel like now I don't really hear people complaining. Like, people, they turn on their Peacock, they turn on their ESPN Plus or whatever these shows are on, they're watching these Saudi Arabia shows, and I don't really hear a ton of backlash or any political. It's like it's kind of just become the norm. And we just saw like this past weekend with King and Queen of the Ring, they had the female stars out there at the beach, taking pictures, making it seem like everything's fine in the culture in Saudi Arabia. And so the sports watching is working, and it's becoming the norm. And then, like you're saying, they have the money to pay and do these shows and make these fights. So yeah, it's difficult as a fan when they're able to do the fights that you want to see, and that's the only place where you can see them.
Yeah, I took a look. So if you want more information on this specific subject, Pollock and Thurston over on Post Wrestling, they their most recent episode of WrestleNomics, they interviewed Bradley Hope, the co-author of Blood and Oil, Mohammed bin Salman's Ruthless Quest for Global Power. And they had an in-depth discussion about this very topic that was probably a lot more informed and researched than I could really discuss on the show, honestly.
Cool. Yeah. So go ahead and check that out. Paul and Thurston, they do great work over there at Post Wrestling. So check them out. Well, that's going to wrap things up here for us this week. Unless are we still holding on recommended match?
There's some good matches out there, but I'm just tired, bro. This has been luckily we did get a couple day break over the weekend between shows, which was good for the wrestlers, probably good for them to get a bit of rest, but it was good for us for our coverage. Like, had a brief reprieve, but I saw that Zack Saber's match with Daniel Makabe from Prestige was made free on YouTube. I saw that well, obviously I want to dive into the Kitamiya Ishii match. There's other stuff out there that's been really good, but I don't know, man. I'm tired.
All right. So that'll wrap things up. Next week, we'll be back to review the Best Super Juniors semifinals and preview the finals and Dominion. So remember, if you want to watch our show live, or if you want to listen without ads and get our bonus content, sign up at patreon.com/KIStrongstyle. You can also make a donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure to connect with us on social media. On X, follow us at KI Strong Style, at Social Suplex, and at Jeremy L. Donovan. On Facebook, follow us at facebook.com/Social Suplex and the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group. On Reddit, I'm the Pro Black Guy and Jonathan's Keeping It Strong Style. On YouTube, we are at Social Suplex. Join our Social Suplex Discord server to interact with us and other wrestling fans. You can email me, Jeremy at socialsuplex.com, and check out all the other shows that we have here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. All Things Elite, hosted by Floyd Johnson Jr. and Austin Sumowitz. Imp's WWE Adventure with the Implications Matthew Mayer, Wrestling Art with Chris Things, Tunnel Talk with Allie, Ann, and Leah, and the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review, and we will catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
Ichiban.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.